baby, you. Welcome to the Sports Court. I'm Gregory Beatty alongside Eddie Cox. Eddie, what is up, my friend? I was just reading about a rap legend, pioneer, Biz Markie, passing on July the 16th. Then if you think about DMX, his passing, I mean, two rap legends, two pioneers in the game. As a matter of fact, I was watching the DMX, and DMX made a lot of music as of late before he passed. I mean, he was back on the right track from all accounts. He had overcome some drug issues. And he was on the right path. And I was actually watching a documentary of DMX, very revealing, very, very, very into that documentary. The only thing is, God rest his soul, I can only understand every other word, but rap legend, rap pioneer, him and Biz Markie. I was just reading up on that before we decided to go live right now.
Hey, for me, it was Busta Rhymes. I remember I used to love Busta's rap, but I couldn't understand half the stuff he was saying. I just know he came through with the punchline, and it hit.
There was. But I was enjoying the documentary. It was on TV One, as a matter of fact, but I just could not make out what I understood every 10 words that DMX was saying. God rest his soul. But great rap legend, pioneer, him and Biz Markie, of course. I see you're wearing that Houston Astros jersey. I like that.
I'm always representing. It ain't nothing new up in here.
When's the last time you've been to a game?
Actually, the last game that I went to is actually a game that you're wanting to talk about and bring up. It was the Athletics, the opener to the series for the Athletics and the Astros.
Okay, well, the Astros are still in first place as of right now. Speaking of that, I know you're being very careful when you go to those games because you see all this road rage going on right now. I mean, guys are just out of their minds with this road rage. A devastating loss by a 17-year-old kid coming from the Astros game not long ago. David Xavier Castro, killed in a road rage incident coming from the Astros game by some lunatic who I don't even think they found yet.
Yeah, I haven't heard an update on it. That's the exact game. That's the last game that I went to. That was that game.
Really?
Wow. We
Wow.
actually left early. My girlfriend and I actually left early because our dogs got out and the cameras let us know they were acting a fool. We had to go home early. And then you hear about something like that happening, and you immediately think, you can't help yourself. You think for the family, but then you think, where could we have been in that scenario? Because we go to lots of games, and I know you go to lots of games, and we're all trying to get to the same place after the game is over, which is home.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just such an unfortunate. It's sad. This is not what Houston, being a fan of a Houston sports team, is about. This is not what Houston sports fans are about. Why don't you just show some courtesy out there on the road? And if somebody's being an ass to you, you're better off to just let it go. Let that guy drive away, because you never know. And with these guys, they were caught in the crossfire. There's hundreds and thousands of lives around, and you're just not the center of the universe. I can't believe some of these people will just pop off live rounds with all these people around. It's crazy, man.
Right.
But ultimately, you can only control yourself, and you need to avoid those situations at all costs.
Absolutely. And the thing about
really feel for this family, man.
17 years old, had his whole life ahead, his entire life ahead of him, and from all accounts was a very, very, very gentle guy. That's what his dad said. I mean, people loved him, had plenty of friends. The guy was concerned. He was actually an advocate for gun violence, and he was concerned about global warming and things of that sort, and just making the environment better around him. And for him to lose his life to some lunatic, I mean, that was just tragic right there. But you know what, Eddie? On a brighter note, of course, the NBA Finals. Game 6 is tonight. The Milwaukee Bucks. Giannis Antetokounmpo, he wants to win him a championship ring just as bad as Chris Paul does. So tonight, Game 6. Now, we hadn't been in here because of different situations the last couple of weeks to really break down the NBA Finals in its entirety after certain games, so to speak. But we're here now. We didn't
and
know
we're
we
going to
come back
assume
in
that
here.
you're all caught up. And we're going to talk about this pivotal Game 6, Greg.
Yes, we are. Yes,
because
we are.
After coming out of the gate fast, the Suns punched the Bucks right in the mouth. The Bucks have done what they've done in every series they've been in so far this year. They've bounced right back. They figured out their opponent, and Giannis has taken his game to another level.
Yes.
And right now, the Suns have their backs against the wall. I don't think last time we were in here, either one of us thought this would be the case.
Well,
but now here we are.
Hey, you know what? We're definitely going to talk about that, like, in the upcoming minutes, as a matter of fact. Then we have Deshaun Watson to talk about. It's not a whole lot of news on the Deshaun Watson front. But
things are getting restless.
Busby is making veiled shots at him, of course.
They're getting restless around over there off Kirby, too, because there's a lot of talk that
camp starts next week.
Teams that may be eyeing Watson, they're going to want to get him in their camp, and they're going to be pressuring the NFL. They're going to be pressuring the Texans to figure out what they're going to do with this guy so he can become available for whoever or whatever franchise he's going to be quarterbacking for the next 10 years. A lot of talks about the Eagles. We'll dig into it deeper later.
We'll definitely dig into that. Definitely the Texans right now, at this point, is definitely starting to heat up because NFL camp is about to start. But the Texans are still in limbo. They're still steadfast on the fact that they're not going to trade Deshaun Watson. And we don't really know their thinking, and we'll talk about it more. But we don't really know their thinking because there's not been a resolution on his civil case as of now. So in a situation where they would have to actually get rid of him, I mean, teams will definitely lowball them in a situation like now because they don't know the situation as well. So we'll see who wants to mortgage their future in all these draft picks and not knowing how soon Deshaun Watson will be able to play. So we'll talk about that and Busby's comments. And, of course, Dame Dollar, the Olympic basketball team. The Olympics, they're talking about that there's a chance that the Olympics could be canceled. But Cam Akers blew his Achilles out. So that, and, of course, the Astros, MLB. Now you're seeing all these runs being scored after the sticky stuff has been banned now from the pitchers. Is that a coincidence or what? But teams are scoring ad nauseum now. 14 runs, 18 runs, home runs like it's no tomorrow. And
6 runs in the ninth to beat the Yankees.
Right.
After
now,
talking a bunch of smack.
Is that a coincidence?
I think not, man. And you know what? This is kind of where baseball is going to kind of fall into its happy place. Because you can't have the pitchers being too dominant without it being clean. You can't have the hitters being too dominant without it being clean. We saw that in the steroid era. They got to find a happy median. And I have no doubt that the good pitchers are going to bounce back, but I feel this is baseball kind of starting to settle into its homeostasis, if you feel me on that one.
Yes. And you know what, too? It's good for the game because most of us, as much as I respect and like a great pitching outing, a 1-0 game, especially in the playoffs, I mean, nip and tuck all the way through. Of course, most of us like seeing runs scored. And so it's only going to benefit the game. It's only going to get more people interested in watching the game once they see more runs scored. So that's the situation right now with MLB. You see teams like the Washington Nationals, and you see what they did a few years ago when they won the World Series. Now they're seeming like a team who can come out of nowhere once again. Juan Soto's starting to heat up. You can see them coming out of nowhere and making a run at it again. So we shall see. Of course, we'll talk about the Astros. And Aaron Rodgers is back in the news, supposedly offered a 2-year deal to be there for the next 5 years by Green Bay, turned it down. But, before we delve into all that, let's talk some NBA for a second, Eddie. And what do you think, I ask this question to you. What do you think has been the turnaround? What has been the reason for the turnaround after the first 2 games that Phoenix definitely controlled the games? And they went up 2-0, obviously. But now the Bucks are back in it because of their physicality, because of the great Giannis Antetokounmpo. Like I said earlier, everybody wants to talk about Chris Paul getting his ring. Giannis is a 2-time MVP. Giannis wants to add to his legacy as well. But what is the reason for them getting back into that series, ultimately taking control of the series? Now they're looking to close it out tonight.
I mean, it's Giannis. It's just one word, Giannis. Because what we're watching happen with Giannis is he's becoming that guy that LeBron James was. Now, he can't do everything that LeBron can. But here we are. We're in the NBA Finals. You've got a formidable opponent on the other side of the floor. And he's doing things, and they know he's getting the ball, and they still can't stop him. Mm-hmm. And we saw that particularly start to happen in Game 3. And early on in late in Game 2, he was starting to heat up. And then in game 3, he just took off and he's never slowed down. And even when they think they have a beat on him or they think they can hold him to a manageable amount of points, they still aren't taking care of the other pieces. Middleton stepping up. Whenever Booker's not having a good game, you feel like it's going to be really hard for the Suns to win. If he's not scoring a lot of points, it's going to be really difficult for them to win the game. But I don't feel the same way about Giannis, the way Chris Middleton has stepped up every time he's gotten an opportunity in this NBA Finals series.
Well, you know what, too? And I'm sitting here looking at Phoenix's roster right now, and Chris Paul is starting to look 36 years old. I mean, as great as Chris Paul has been, and hey,
I think Perkins said it well when he said CP3 looks like he needs CPR.
Big Perk tells it like it is, and that's the case right now. Now, granted, he can definitely bounce back tonight, and they'll have Game 7 in Phoenix. But since Game 2, the Milwaukee Bucks have definitely turned up the pressure on the defensive side of the ball. And they have imposed their physicality. And, of course, you have Sarge out, so that doesn't help. Now you have DeAndre Ayton, who's a one-man show as a big man down there. And this is what I was saying before the playoffs started when you used to always pose the question to me about how did I like Phoenix and their chances. Now, granted, like I said, they still can end up ultimately winning this championship. But what you're seeing now from the Milwaukee Bucks, you're seeing them being battle-tested the last couple of years, going through the rigors of the playoff series and their losses and their learning experiences. And, of course, Giannis, 2-time MVP. Then you have a guy over there like Jrue Holiday, who's a pit bull, who early on was not giving you the offense. Last game, he turned it up on the offensive side of things. Chris Middleton, who last year, I used to always say he's probably the third option, the third guy. Chris Middleton is the real deal, and he's the closer for that team, a guy that can also knock down free throws. But Chris Middleton is the real deal. So what they're doing, when all those top 3 guys are playing at a high level, plus the Milwaukee Bucks are deeper on the roster. I'm talking about, you have Connaughton. I mean, you just have guys that can flat out get it done. And so what's happening, they're imposing their will. They're using their experience that they've gained. Again, they're battle-tested. And Giannis is not only dominating, like they said, he's dominating a la Shaquille O'Neal type dominance. I mean, that's the way Giannis is looking. One thing I like about Giannis is not afraid, even though he's not a great three-point shooter or he's not a great shooter at all, but he finds a way to get it done on the basketball court. He has relentless energy. He's always going full throttle, and he's always on the attack. And what he's also doing now, he's trusting his teammates, and he's making the right plays. He's also a playmaker. So you accompany that with the fact that they've turned up their physicality on the defensive side of the ball, and they're telling Phoenix, hey, you're going to have to use some ball movement. If you're just going to depend on Devin Booker to be a one-man wrecking crew, I think Devin Booker, as great as Devin Booker has been, he started listening to the Kobe comparisons too much. And I think he's starting to act like he's Kobe on the basketball court. I love his game. Tremendous player. But I think he's trying to act like Kobe on the basketball court and take the onus upon himself way too often. Kobe Bryant, my favorite player ever, the late, great Kobe Bryant. But the guy has, I think in the last couple of games in the fourth quarter, 0 assists. So everyone knows, and Jrue Holiday said as much after the last game. They knew that Devin Booker was going to take that last shot. I mean, I think it was a veiled shot at Devin Booker, saying that they knew he was going to want to take the last shot, and ultimately got stripped of the basketball by Jrue Holiday, who played a tremendous game. But if the Phoenix Suns don't get back to moving the basketball and letting CP3 initiate the offense, and Devin Booker becomes more of a playmaker as well, they're not going to have a chance tonight, because the physicality that Milwaukee is bringing right now, they're trying to close it out. They have shooters, and when Middleton and Jrue Holiday are clicking on the offensive side of the ball, I mean, it may just be a wrap tonight. As a matter of fact, I'm expecting the Milwaukee Bucks to finish it off tonight. And Mikal Bridges, Cameron Johnson, I mean, those guys, they have to be more involved in the offense. Mikal Bridges, before the last game, the Phoenix Suns were 10-0 when he takes 10 shots or more. He can't take 4 shots or 5 shots or 7 shots. He needs to get his shots up. You need to keep the Milwaukee Bucks defense honest. And of course, Cameron Johnson has to get more looks. You have Crowder, you have these guys. But now, again, as far as down low, you don't have no one but DeAndre Ayton to man the paint. And you see Giannis has taken full advantage of Saric not being there. And he's going to make DeAndre Ayton stop him. And ultimately, what's going to happen is if he gets too aggressive, trying to block shots and things of that sort, and be the sole guy in the paint that's going to man things in the paint, he's going to get in foul trouble. So the Milwaukee Bucks know that, and they're on the attack. They're killing them on the offensive boards. Again, what it boils down to, they're just being more physical right now.
We knew going into the series that they're a more physical team, and the Suns may have jumped on them quickly, like you might see a smaller fighter to a bigger fighter in a cage fight.
Right.
But ultimately, the bigger, tougher guy, if he don't get knocked out right away, he's going to prevail. And that looks like what's happening now. And then now you got a Game 6 in Milwaukee that's going to be very, very tough for the Suns
to pull out. They haven't won a championship since '71.
Now, but here's the deal. I think the Suns are in a decent position to win this game. They got to settle down. They got to get back to what they were doing. Mm-hmm. We know Giannis is going to go off. What is Chris Paul going to do? I think this is a perfect game where Chris Paul takes the entire game into his hands and is able to grind the tempo of this one way down. And we talk about one of them classic 99 to 97 or 198 games that you get when you get a Chris Paul type of game. It reminds me, I always go back to this game. It was such an epic game. Game 5 back in, when was it, 2017, I want to say, or when the Rockets played the Warriors.
The Warriors?
And that game 5.
The game he got hurt?
The game he got hurt. That Game 5, you could tell Chris Paul was in total control of that entire game. And in the end, I think it ended up being like a 98-96 victory, something along those lines. That's the kind of game that the Suns need. They don't need this balls to the wall, try to go out and score 125 points. I don't think that's going to work. The Bucks have already figured out how to stop that, and they already figured out how to beat it. If they're going to win, they're going to win playing some controlled basketball, keeping, like you mentioned, DeAndre Ayton out of foul trouble, if possible. They're going to have to deploy somebody. They're going to have to put Comiskey in there, somebody to foul the guy, just to do something to stop the guy. I know that's probably not an option, but you were right. Ever since Saric has gone out, Giannis has just been running amok, and it's been bad news for the Suns. But just the way this whole series has gone down, I mean, it's a quick reminder. When you look at it, you almost forget initially how good the Suns were playing. You forget outside of Chris Paul, this is a very, very young team with hardly any experience at all.
Right.
And then when you look at the Bucks, there's a bunch of guys over there who've been here before, came up just a hair short, and you even got another guy over there that's pissed off because he's been doing the same thing over in the Western Conference for the past 5 years. So they're hungrier now, and I think the Suns might have let off the gas. I mean, just a little. If that's what happened, might have let off the gas just a little bit too early, and now the Bucks have totally blown their doors off, and I'm not so sure that the Suns are going to be able to catch up in this race. This may be the last game of the series.
Yeah, and you know what? Again, Giannis wants to add a championship to his repertoire as well.
It had 7 games written all over it in the beginning, so
and you know what?
I hope we get there for sake of the series.
Now, granted, Scott Foster is calling the game
tonight. Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. I totally forgot. You might as well go to Vegas, place the bet right now. There's no way Chris Paul and the Suns are going to prevail. Not with Scott Foster.
He's 2-15 in the playoffs. But here's what I'm thinking in that regard too. I mean, maybe the NBA may have something up their sleeve. And you know I can be a conspiracy theorist to a degree. And granted, the Milwaukee Bucks can control all this by coming out and being dominant and being in their clothes on the defensive side of the ball and not letting these guys get off, just playing tremendous defense. I think Phoenix's best chance is to turn it up a notch on the defensive side as well and force turnovers, don't commit turnovers themselves, and I think they have a great chance of being in the game. And, of course, obviously, too, you have to get those other guys involved more. Devin Booker, I mean, of course, they need Devin Booker to be Devin Booker and score at a very high percentage, but also Devin Booker has to trust his teammates, and I know it's do or die time, and hopefully he doesn't shoot them out of the ball game, and usually when he's shooting, the ball is going in. So he's going to have to pick and choose. I mean, he's going to have to get other guys involved, build their confidence early. Of course, the offense is going to have to run through Chris Paul. DeAndre Ayton, now again, he looks like a man on the island by himself, the only big man, and now he's starting to look his age to a degree, even though he's still putting up decent numbers. But here's a guy who's probably feeling like, hey, I can't man this paint by myself. You know, as tough as Jay Crowder is,
he just can't do it without getting in
6'7".
foul trouble. There's no way. Not against a guy like Giannis. Not against a guy with that much strength and that kind of ups and length. There's no way that you can expect Ayton at his young age to be able to hang. And then even on the other end of the floor, Giannis showing impressive athletic ability, coming back around backside, getting major blocks late in games that are turning the tide. I think it was game 3. Turned the tide in game 3. Giannis, I think right now, if he wins this championship, if the Bucks win this championship, right now you're going to see this start to break the Bucks' way from here on out, like possible Eastern Conference dynasty. And I don't care what the Nets are going to do because they haven't proven anything to me yet. You know, KD really is the only one I truly believe in over there.
I got you.
But I think once Giannis cracks this first one, if he gets this monkey off his back, I think there's going to be several more to come right after that.
And you know what? Even though there's been some...
And I know I'm not going out on a huge limb here.
No, you're not.
But it's very competitive over there. And I think just getting that taste of championship, stake is going to give them,
Well, he's going to settle down.
It's going to solidify them as continuous contenders year in and year out and possible dynasty.
Right, because that team, I mean... They're going. If they keep that same roster, I don't see why not. Middleton is only going to get better. He's been coming into his own as a true star. Drew Holiday, a great leader, a great floor general, who's probably going to even get better at this point in his career. You know he's going to be a dog on the defensive side of the ball. PJ Tucker is going to bring his toughness every day. And that's the thing with the Bucks right now. They have some tremendous defenders on the wing. And that's not even to mention Lopez, a 7-footer in there. I mean, we don't even talk about Lopez, a guy that can control the paint, and he's a presence inside. And also he can keep you honest by stepping out, knocking down the three-pointer. So he opens up things. He opened up things for Giannis to operate, for Chris Middleton to operate, for Drew Holiday to operate. But these guys, the Milwaukee Bucks, have tremendous wing defenders in Giannis, PJ Tucker, Drew Holiday, and Chris Middleton. So I think they've started to really, really turn it up a notch on Phoenix. And Phoenix is going to have to move that basketball and keep those guys scrambling to really have a chance in this game. Of course, Chris Paul is going to have to be Chris Paul. But what I was going to say about Scott Foster, maybe the NBA, you know they want a Game 7. You know they want a Game 7. But, again, what's going to control if that happens is, of course, they're playing in Milwaukee. But Scott Foster, they may just send him over there to flip the script and actually do some things in Phoenix's favor and change the narrative and try and get this to a Game 7. But again, it's all going to depend on who makes shots.
No,
who
Scott's
paint.
he's not gonna put his winning streak on the line. I'm telling you.
Come on, man.
It ain't gonna happen.
So you think he's gonna go at Chris Paul and really try to get him out of there?
Man, I don't know if he's going to try to get him out of there. It
We'll
just
see
seems
what
like
happens.
in basketball,
Hopefully he calls the game fair.
You know that there's multiple calls that can go. They can go either way. And when you've got Scott Foster out there and you've got Chris Paul out there at the same time, you know they're just not going to go Chris's way.
Well, I mean,
and it's hard to win close competitive games that are a point or two difference. You know, the teams are so evenly matched. Mm-hmm. It's hard to win those games when every single break, 50-50, don't go your way.
Yeah. Well, like I say, maybe he got called into the office. We'll see. Maybe he got called into the office and was like, I mean, and Silver was like, hey, let's change the narrative. Of course, call the game fairly. But, hey, you know, those 50-50 plays, make sure Phoenix gets a lot of those. You know, we want a Game 7. You know, money-wise, a Game 7 would be ideal. But obviously,
you heard it here first. Conspiracy Court. That's what it is. We're going to change the name to Conspiracy Court every Tuesday from 6 to 8.
Hey, you know what, though? Hopefully he calls the game fair and square. But to your point, though, the thing about it, a lot of these games that Chris Paul, 2-15, and a lot of these has been playoff games. So,
we saw our fair share here in Houston.
Right.
We know Foster does not like Paul. He didn't like James Harden either.
And he's not one of those guys. Scott Foster doesn't seem to be one of those guys like when you call him out in the media, okay, maybe he's going to change his stripes, because he wants you to like him and all this and that. Chris Paul and these guys have been steadfast on talking about how
he's that
he has
old
been
lady,
against them.
He's that old lady
like,
doing 55 in the fast lane. You know what I'm saying? She's doing 55. She's got her handicap placard on the mirror. She's not moving over. You can go around if you want, but she's gonna keep doing what she's been doing forever because that's what she does, and that's how Scott Foster is.
Yes.
Now, in closing about this, I'll say about the Bucks. Once they're able to pull this off, and the reason I feel they are so equipped to be that dynasty team is because Giannis has shown me that he's that LeBron-like player that you could just plug these guys around. If Middleton moves on to bigger and better contracts, then I think you plug in the next guy, you find the next guy. There's going to be no shortage of players who are going to want to get out of their situation. And I'm just using him as an example, but you can take in the whole lot of them. PJ Tucker can retire.
No, I mean Giannis re-up with Milwaukee, so it shows his allegiance to Milwaukee.
Right, and they realize, and he's showing in these finals. He's showing me for the first time, and I know there's been a lot of people who have been big believers in Giannis, and I always believed in the talent. But he's showing me the ability to come through in these big games and to show up the way he has, and in the most clutch moments, do what he's doing. That shows me that they can win any year with not just anybody, but they can go at it and make a crack at it every year. Change this piece, change that piece, and it is going to make that big of a difference because the main block of your motor is Giannis Antetokounmpo, the best player in the world.
Hey, if he wins this championship, I'm sure a lot of people are going to feel that way. I still say it's KD right now, but we shall see. But Giannis is definitely elevated in my eyes to top 3. I mean, the way this guy's been so dominant, back-to-back 40-point games, double-digit in rebounds, and then if you add what he does on the defense side of the ball. But again, what I like so much about Giannis is the fact that his motor is so high, and he's only going to get better, you would think, as a shooter. And he's not the type of guy, if he misses a couple shots, that he's going to sulk about it and he's going to go into some deep funk to where he's not going to even keep attacking. He's going to keep attacking. He's going to put his imprint on the game in one way or another.
And
so
you know
I
what? You know where I noticed it the most, Greg? I noticed it the most, like his awareness in crucial moments. He's always been a high motor guy. And we laud these high motor guys. We applaud them. They're great. But sometimes that motor can get you into trouble when you're not under control or you don't know what the right move to make is. And this year, or in particular in this final series, I'm not seeing Giannis make those kind of mistakes that he's made in the past. He's in the right place. He's never caught slipping. He's always got his head on a swivel. And,
That's true.
And you just can't get by the guy, and you can't keep him in front of you. He's an amazing
No, you cannot keep him in front of you.
I'm telling you, he's won me
attack.
over in these finals as far as his stature in the NBA. And with LeBron, on the way out, I'm hard pressed to find somebody else more equipped to take that. To take the torch or the baton from LeBron than Giannis Antetokounmpo, especially when you look at his youth and how healthy he's been throughout his career.
Years old. And of course, my guy is Luka, but Giannis is on the verge of capturing that
championship. You think KD wishes LeBron would have retired years ago? That way we could have the KD era because he's good enough to have one of his own too. But injuries and whatnot have slowed that down.
Tequila. He was at the last game with his tequila.
So was LeBron.
Huh?
So was LeBron, right?
No.
You thought talking about KD.
Oh, well, LeBron was down at the game promoting that tequila. But, of course, LeBron is still going to be in tremendous shape when he comes back. He's just kicking it in the offseason. Hey, man, I promise you, I heard a guy at the store tell his son, and I would think he's joking. I hadn't watched the movie. And kudos to LeBron for doing this movie, Space Jam again. But I heard him tell his son, if he don't quit acting out, he's going to make him watch Space Jam again. I promise you I heard him say that. And I said, what? But hey, but you know what, Eddie? Also, Dame Dollar, you have Chauncey Billups in the fold now in Portland, who I think is going to be a tremendous coach. Dame Dollar he may force his way out the door. What do you think happens in Portland?
I don't know. I could see him forcing his way out if he really wanted to.
I think he's going to.
But the Damian Lillard that I know through just what I see in the media and the player that I see on the court and the way he handles himself, I'm not so sure I see him turning heel like that in Portland. Maybe next year or after next season, if Portland still can't make that magical run they've tried to make year after year after year ever since they've acquired Dame Dollar. But I'm not so sure he forces it. But on the other side of the coin,
I don't think he needs Chauncey Billups high and dry as well.
No, but on the flip side of the coin, though, you don't want to wait for a situation to get so bad to where you're forced to trade a player or you need to make a deal for a player and you don't have a lot of time to make it. Because then you don't end up with the best deal. You don't end up with the best haul. It may be in Portland's best interest if they could see the writing on the wall and they know that they're not better than Phoenix, Denver, Dallas, you name it, all the way down,
right.
LA,
right.
They're not better than those guys next year. So what's one more year for Dame going to do for them? Nothing.
Right.
So they see the writing on the wall. Maybe they make a move this offseason while there's a lot of teams with some high draft picks and some other players that they can get involved that can make a good move, they can get a good haul. It's hard trading that player. Whenever you trade the best player, the face of the franchise, it's almost an impossible situation to be in. But some of the most savvy and cutthroat GMs and trade makers in the industry, they'll make those moves.
Right.
So we'll see if Portland is about that. If they do, then you're going to see a feeding frenzy because everybody's going to want to get their hands on this guy. The Lakers are going to be in the conversation. The Clippers.
Teams that's ready to win right now.
Yeah, everybody's going to be in the conversation. It's going to be a free-for-all. And so that leaves the door open. I think Portland may start putting feelers out there right away. So what if Dame sours because they start exploring a trade, then and that speeds things up, so be it.
Right.
But right now, I think what we're seeing, Greg, is we're seeing the beginning of the end and how it ends. Whether it's good for both parties, good for just one, or good for none. I think it's in the hands of the Portland Trailblazers to figure out what exactly they're going to do. Because if you just sit around and sit on your hands, ultimately, I don't think you're going to end up with the best haul for this guy.
Well, they have I think 126 million in cap space right now, or 126 million doled out to players right now. The thing about Portland is they didn't have a first-round draft pick last season. They don't have one this season, so they really don't have a whole lot to really trade for Dame Dollar. I mean, something that someone really covets.
Who's that?
I mean, McCollum.
Who's that you said?
Dame Dollar.
No, who doesn't have a lot of capital to trade for Dame?
No. Well, Portland doesn't have a lot of draft capital to trade Dame Dollar for someone. I mean, for someone to really covet him, you would think they would want a first-round draft pick back in return. I mean, who do they have?
Well, it's going to start with
McCollum?
Yeah, it's going to start with. It's going to start.
You trade him for Ben Simmons?
I don't know.
But
I don't know how that's going to work. Although I know Philly is in on the talks, but I think you want to get a high draft pick for sure.
Yeah.
If you're going to trade Dame Dollar, you want to get a high draft pick if you can, or you want to get multiple draft picks from a team that does Dame Dollar have a no trade clause? I don't know about this. Yes or no?
I'm not sure, but I know he's
that
under
would
contract
change things.
until I think 2025.
Because if they can trade him anywhere, and there's a chance that the team may be mediocre, I think that would be in their best interest if they're going to get 4 first-round picks and 4 pick swaps, similar to what Houston got for James Harden. Although the word is that the haul for a Dame is probably going to be quite a bit more than James when you consider the Rockets' position where they were at and Morey sort of being backed into a corner with the whole deal. Or not Morey, I'm sorry, but Stone being backed into a corner with the whole deal.
Speaking of Morey doesn't really like to do deals where he acquiesces to what the other party wants.
Right. He likes to be the big winner.
Yeah.
Exactly. And as Portland can be in that position if they decide to start shopping Lillard this offseason.
And that's all Dame is saying, Eddie. He's just saying, okay, hey, I would love to be here. He's made it clear that he would love to finish his career in Portland. Of course, he wants to give Chauncey Billups some chance. He stated as much that, hey, a great coach can turn things around for a team. I mean, if you look at what McMillan has done for the Atlanta Hawks and on and on and on, I mean, a great coach can be that much of a difference. But he's also saying to Portland's front office, don't you operate from that perspective only. I want to make sure that you guys are doing everything to get as much talent in here as possible because they're definitely a superstar away from actually competing. So he's saying, hey, build the correct roster around me. However you can do it. I mean, I don't know the financial handicaps that's going on right now, but whatever you have to do, build me a team to go with Chauncey Billups, to go with him, and then we'll see what happens. So he's saying all the right things right now, and I think he wants to give it a go in Portland under Chauncey Billups and see what happens. But he's pretty much saying it's been nice to make it to the playoffs every year, but making it to the playoffs is not his ultimate goal, obviously. He wants to win a championship. So he's putting the onus on the Portland Trail Blazers organization to do everything possible if he's going to be locked in Portland to get him the requisite players around him to make it happen. Now,
Look,
they have the coach now in his eyes.
Sometimes
in their eyes.
Sometimes in order for you to achieve that goal, you just have to make a move. Sometimes you see.
He may want out, but just saying everything, just playing the high road right now.
Well, yeah, you got to, because I mean, if you're Dame, he doesn't want to come off like how James Harden came off. You know, he lost.
Absolutely.
He lost a lot of support. You know, I know there's a whole slew of new James Harden fans up in New Jersey or up in Brooklyn, but here in Houston, where he was a legend, he is no more. I mean, I'm sure he still comes down here and visits and has, you know, his people and all, you know, his crew down here. But as far as being a legend and be loved by fans, he ain't it anymore.
Yeah.
It just that he's not that guy.
He never got a championship to go along with it.
Yeah, but
if he had a championship, that'd be.
It had a lot to do with the way he exited, though. Had he exited
Absolutely.
the city in any other way than forcing his way out, then things would be completely different. But Dame Lillard, if Portland does hold on to him one more year, they're going to lose a little bit of value in the trade, in the sense that right now I think he just inked the deal not that long ago. When did he sign his contract? Does he still have 4 years left?
I think he's under contract till 25.
So he's got 4 more years left on his contract. You're telling a team that you can trade them Damian Lillard, and they've got 4 years with this guy to build around him and to figure out the best roster they can put together? I mean, to me, that is the icing on the cake that's going to get them the biggest haul we may have seen in NBA history when it comes to trading for a superstar.
Well, it would have to be with a team that doesn't have any real high expectations for the next couple of years, because, again, they have no first round. I mean, and even the first round draft pick, the latest first round draft pick that they had, he's barely played. So they really don't have any draft picks in the next couple of years.
Right.
I know this past year,
but when you trade
this
Lillard,
upcoming draft,
you replenish the cupboard, because you're going to
so
get.
they would have to be looking. The team that trades for him would have to be looking like down the line the next few years, because they're not going to get that superstar back. A Dame Lillard, and you're not going to get an equal to Dame Lillard. I mean, again, unless you're trading for somebody like Ben Simmons, who still is not equal to Dame Lillard, but he's an all-star. So
it does,
it's not going to be an equal trade. It's not going to be an equal trade. And I see him staying in Portland and trying to make it work. But, again, that's very interesting right there. The Olympic basketball team, what do you think about them and their chances, if they even have the Olympics? Because now, with this COVID situation spiking once again, I'm not even sure that the Olympics are going to even go on.
Well, if it does, I mean, of course, they'll be the favorites, but I don't know how much the players that are there really care about winning a gold medal. I feel like, you know, even though you do still have a good handful of superstars out there, it just doesn't have that same feel to it that it had even 4 years ago. You know, it's different when you don't have the heavy hitters out there, when you don't have, you know, your LeBron James, James Harden, all these big names. You don't have them out there. You start with your second tier, you know, superstars. Though, granted, don't get me wrong, these are still big names, but it just doesn't have the same. It doesn't have the same luster. Yeah, it didn't have the same luster. And then you've got teams around the world that are just getting better.
Well,
the game is getting more popular and played by more people, and other countries are getting better players. You're getting more players from Serbia, more players from you know, South America, all different countries. And this is because of how the game's been spread around the world. These teams are getting better. So as the talent that USA is used to having just dominating everybody, now we're starting to see the playing field level just a little bit, as some of the high-end, high-name players are sitting out, and as the rest of the world continues to get better.
Well, you look at Bradley Beal and Kevin Love. They're out now.
Kevin Love whooped-de-doo.
Injury. Yeah. Well, yeah.
I almost
Bradley
forgot he was
Beal
still
because
playing
of COVID
basketball,
concerns.
for being
Me
completely
too, to
honest.
tell
They
you the
said
truth.
Kevin Love.
But they
Where the hell
replaced
he
him with
been?
Keldon Johnson.
Has he been on the
and JaVale
USA
McGee.
squad the entire season? Because I haven't heard anything about him.
Keldon Johnson and JaVale McGee. Hey, you're right. I didn't know where Kevin Love was as well. But the thing about these international teams, those guys have built a lot of chemistry playing with each other. They've played with one another for long periods of time. And you can see it in a few of those exhibition games that the U.S. lost. And I agree, you don't have those heavy hitters like LeBron James. You don't have Giannis. And you see Luka was able to get his country into the Olympics for the first time. Is that Serbia?
Yeah.
Into the Olympics for the first time ever. But again, you have these teams that's played together for years and years and years, and they've built that camaraderie, they've built that chemistry, and then you have a USA team. In my opinion, of course, they would still be the favorite in my opinion as well, but they would have to be really engaged. They would have to build some chemistry because these teams are no slouches, like you were just talking about, and they're no slouches, and they can play. And what they would have to do, they would have to turn it up on the intensity side of things, especially on the defense side of the ball.
Just keep in mind, Greg,
they would have to be honed in and really want it. And to your point, do they really want it?
Keep in mind, though, we got to remember what we've seen. You know, everybody wants to have a quick knee-jerk reaction to these initial exhibition games.
I
mean, but you are seeing a lot of people.
Of
You know, I
course,
mean, even
of
us,
course.
we're recognizing, well, the team isn't as strong as it has been in the past. But I think the moment you remove that word exhibition, all of a sudden you see a different energy out of the team, out of the USA squad.
And that's been my whole take all along.
And like you when you said, you know, how bad do they want it? It's just something about that word exhibition. Everything exhibition in this country, nobody really gives a damn about. You know, it's like we'll watch it. It's like preseason football. It's entertaining. We want to get a look at the guys, but nobody gives a damn about the outcome.
Absolutely.
Nobody cares who wins. You know, but as soon as it's week one and the games start to count, things start to matter, all of a sudden you see these players playing with a different intensity, and that's ultimately is going to be what's going to separate this team from the rest of the world.
I mean, and I agree. And of course they're not going to be like the 92 Dream Team, Larry Bird, Charles Barkley, Magic Johnson,
Why not?
Michael Jordan.
Why not?
They're
Why
not
can't
going to
JaVale
be
McGee
that
put on
dominant.
some 4-inch
They're
shorts?
not going to be that dominant.
Headband, long knee-high
But
socks, and go out there and be like the Dream Team. Whoa.
Hey, man, you know what, though? Again, like you even said, and like I said, their intensity level is going to pick up, and that's been my take all along. When they were saying exhibition, and everybody was on TV worrying about them, and I was sitting back saying to myself, it's exhibition, it's practice. Granted, they have to get better as a team, and they have to find out who's going to take the shot at this time, and they have to get that chemistry and that camaraderie. We get that, so that in essence, they have to continue to play together. But again, once they change their mental approach and they turn it up on the defensive side of things and really take these other teams out of their game, really make these other teams really feel inadequate and feel like that they cannot compete against a USA team, I don't care who's on the roster, it's going to be obvious who's the most talented team. Once they turn it up on the defensive side of the ball, and that's what they have to do, they'll be just fine. Now, again, we will see if there is an Olympics. We will see. We shall see. But, hey, man, real quick before we move on to some NFL, have you seen that guy, 7'3", 16-year-old Victor Wembanyama from Europe? Speaking of international basketball, 7'3", 16 years old, and can ball. He can ball. Of course, I've been on the show talking about Chet Holmgren, who's going to Gonzaga. At least he's committed to Gonzaga. 7'2", 7'3" basketball player from Minnesota. But this guy, Victor Wembanyama, check him out. 7'10" wingspan. 7'10" wingspan. He can play. Looks like he can handle the rock.
He's got a whole taco fall
hey,
from end
and he
to
can
end
handle the rock
on his
like KD.
fingertips.
And he's only going to fill out that body. 16 years old. They say 2023, I think it is. He should be the number one pick. At least he's projected to be the number one pick in that draft. Just as Chet Holmgren is predicted to be the number one pick in next year's draft and top high school player coming out of high school from this past season. So we shall see. But you want to talk some NFL?
Whatever you want, man.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Hey, they say Zeke is looking good right now in camp.
Oh, here we go.
They say Zeke is hey, did you see the picture of Zeke?
No, but I bet you he's in fantastic shape.
Yes, he's in tremendous shape. And of course, the Cowboys, they're going to be on Hard Knocks.
Hey, you know what? I saw a meme. It made me. I should have sent it to you.
Okay.
It made me laugh. It's a meme of Tom Brady, and it said, "There's only one thing that could stop Tom from winning another Super Bowl," and it was him holding that star and in a Cowboys jersey. I was like, "Oh man,
you know what, man?
that's cold."
My boys are going to be right this year. That defense, anchored by Michael Parsons.
How's the ankle?
The field.
What are we hearing about? What are we hearing about the ankle for Dak? How's the ankle?
The ankle is going to be just fine. I'm sure. I don't know. Of course, Dak is not going to be the one that's going to be complaining and really putting a lot of attention and focus on that ankle. He says he's fine, but I'm willing to bet that ankle has to get sore from time to time. I mean, it was a devastating break. And, of course, the tendons and the muscles around that ankle, even though the bone is probably healed of 100%, I'm sure that ankle gets sore, but I'm sure it's the type of sore, at least I'm hoping, that it's the type of soreness that he knows that the ankle isn't any worse just because it's sore. And it's just going to take time for those muscles and tendons to really get right. So I don't know how he's actually moving around on the football field. From the highlights that I've seen of him, he's moving around pretty good, at least from what they've shown. But so we shall see when they ramp it up in camp and he's practicing even more and more on it, or when he has to make sudden moves against opponents that's after him. We'll see how that ankle responds. But from all accounts, the ankle is fine right now. And as far as Zeke, I think Zeke is going to have a bounce-back year. If they get some continuity on that offensive line, I think a lot of that had to do with his fall-off last year was the offensive line. It was a different offensive line every week. Never any continuity. So, of course, he's rared and ready to go. He's ready to roll. 26 years old. I think he still has 3 more years of high-quality football left in him at that running back position. 26, 27, 28. If he continues to stay in shape like he is. Again, he's going to get Tyronn Smith back.
I'm thinking Tyronn Lue is going to look awfully small on the end of the line.
Tyronn Smith back, who's, speaking of back, I mean, his back.
Is he the same guy? Is he still going to be the same guy?
He's not. But just his presence alone, hopefully he can be at least some type of presence.
A little bit better than a turnstile.
A little bit better than, yeah, I mean, be some kind of semblance of his old self to a degree. But then, of course, Zach Martin, and then you have a couple of other guys you're going to have coming back. So maybe they can get that offensive line together, and we shall see. But I'm really looking forward to seeing what my Cowboys can do with a healthy roster, with Michael Parsons anchoring that defense, and we shall see.
Yeah, and the defense being run by a guy who has built a Super Bowl caliber defense before in Dan Quinn.
Speaking of Dan Quinn, did you see? Now, I was all talking about, I hadn't said it on the show yet, but I was like, sign Richard Sherman. You know I try to move everyone to free safety. Mm-hmm. Sign Richard Sherman to the Dallas Cowboys. Move him to free safety. Hopefully he would be willing to move to free safety.
That's how arrogant you damn Cowboys fans are. You think
6'4",
everyone just wants to change position and come play for the Cowboys.
Check it out, though. But here's the deal, though.
They're like Lamar Jackson can move to corner.
No,
and play wide receiver.
Keep Lamar at quarterback.
And we can keep that.
With Richard Sherman, my thing with Richard Sherman is at least before the allegations of what? Resisting arrest, DUI, endangering roadway workers, domestic violence related accounts of malicious mischief and criminal trespass. So he has some legal matters he has to worry about first. But the reason I said that with him, and of course he's still a serviceable cornerback, but 33 years old. I mean, he still has. I bet he can be very rangy at that free safety position.
You bet.
He's smart.
You bet.
But I would hope he would. Now, I don't think the Cowboys are going to take a chance on him, at least as of now. And hopefully he gets his life together, gets his mental issues together. You see where he got arrested for trying to break into his wife's parents' house. For one, bruh, you can't do that. That's the quickest way to get shot. First of all, he's lucky he didn't get shot. So he needs to get it together. But I just thought about that when you said Dan Quinn.
Hey, but ultimately, I mean, he's got some big fish to fry. He needs to figure out what's going on with his
mental.
With the substance abuse, whether it's alcohol, whatever it is. Clearly, he wasn't in.
Need to get off that yak.
He wasn't in a sober state of mind.
No,
and then also learn how to deal with personal issues without turning to those types of things, because we see that happen. Just in America, people are having problems at home, and then they turn to alcohol, and then they get blackout drunk, and then they do something that they regret for the rest of their lives.
Right.
And Richard Sherman beating on the door, trying to get in anywhere where his family or where his ex or girlfriend or anything like that, any member of his family or anybody he cares about, is that ultimately the end of that situation is going to end in a way where Richard Sherman is going to be regretting it. And how much is based on how far he goes or what he ends up doing. I think he got lucky in this one. This is going to be...
He's lucky he didn't get shot.
I know what kind of guy he is. We think we know. But, I mean, he seems like a smart guy, and I think he's going to learn his lesson from this. And this was a close call that could have been a whole lot worse than it ended up turning out being.
Absolutely.
And you could tell...
obviously, he was not in his right mind. Obviously.
I want to give props to, his ex-wife or girlfriend, the female part, because she seems, from everything I've read, to be fully in Richard's corner. She wants what's best for him, and if things are going to reconcile or if they're going to have a relationship of any type, whether it be romantic or some other type of relationship, he's going to have to get better and he's going to have to fix these problems that he's having. But she seems like she's right there in his corner and is being supportive.
Right.
And that is also something that, is rare in these cases, and Richard should be very thankful to have.
Absolutely. I mean, she's definitely in his corner, and she was talking about how he was threatening suicide, but she did make it a point to say that he was out of character. That is not his character. And we all know Richard Sherman is a very intelligent guy, very smart guy. It wasn't a wise decision he made, of course. But when you're under the influence of alcohol like that, he wasn't in his right mind. Now, he said the right things since then. He's admitted that he needs to get the necessary help to handle his mental issues. So that was step one right there. He didn't run from it. He was accountable for his actions, and he clearly stated that he was going to seek the necessary help. So hopefully that's a start of him going in the right direction. And again, like you said, his wife definitely had his back. I like that. So, hey, man, but again, you have to, I mean, if you're going to drink and you're going to try to break in someone else's house like that, of course, there's a family member, your in-laws, but the first thing you have to think about when you're trying to break into someone's house and you're trying to kick the door down or knock the door down, I don't care how drunk you are, you have to be aware of the fact that it could be some gunfire exchange. I mean, bro, he is lucky right there. So hopefully he gets it together. And we shall see. But what do you think about Aaron Rodgers turning down that 2-year contract?
I mean, this is old news. This came out a while back that Aaron was turning down that contract offer. And now people are acting like it's just, it's front page news. It's just another sign, it's Aaron's way of flexing and saying that, hey, I'm not happy and just money is not going to shut me up.
What have I always said? It's about respect with Aaron Rodgers.
Hey, and right, wrong, or indifferent, we've talked ad nauseum and whether, whether we feel his stance or the way he's acted on his feelings, whether it's right or wrong. We've talked about it, back and forth a bunch. But clearly, he's going to flex and use whatever leverage that he has, and he's not going to put himself under contract and have that leverage evaporate right before his eyes.
Well, he doesn't want to be tied in for the next 5 years.
That's all he's got left. I mean,
yeah.
When you really break it down, how many more good years does Aaron Rodgers have left?
Right. But you know what, too, Eddie? Next week is going to tell what's really going on, where his thinking really is. I mean, right now, we can all speculate. And, of course, I've been on Front Street and saying that I think Green Bay wants him out of Green Bay, and they're ready to move on. Of course, I think they're trying to save face in this situation right here, and they're actually trying to put it out there to the public like, look, and I've said this before. I said it months ago. Look, we tried to keep him. We've tried to do this, and we've tried to do that. Now, granted, if he would accept the offer, then who knows? Maybe they'd be like, okay, well, we're getting the MVP back. But at the same token, if that's what they're doing, and I heard someone else say this too, and it makes a lot of sense. If that's what they're doing, why wouldn't they go ahead and trade him right now so they can get as much as they want in return? But like I said a while back too, sometimes teams and organizations, they sabotage themselves, and they don't make astute decisions, and they don't make the right decisions that's going to benefit their organization because they're just trying to do things for public consumption, and they're trying to show that they're in control. And a lot of times when that happens, they sabotage themselves by making the wrong decision. So you would think that if they really want him out of there, that they would go ahead and make a trade right now. But at the same time, the public outcry that they're going to have the backlash, like I stated before, they don't want that public backlash. So I think they're kind of trying to play on the fence in Green Bay. I honestly think, because again, Matt LaFleur, in my humble opinion, Matt LaFleur, if he really wanted the organization to really acquiesce to some of Aaron Rodgers' wants and needs that he's had over the years, and I would think that he would have more pull and more say-so in going to the organization and making sure that they do some of the things that Aaron Rodgers wanted. And because he knows what Aaron Rodgers wants, and he knows what Aaron Rodgers has always wanted, and he just wanted input on certain things. Aaron Rodgers feels highly disrespected, and they drafted Jordan Love. They drafted his successor. I'm not too sure, and I'll say it again. I'll double down on it. I will triple down on it. I'm not too sure if they want Aaron Rodgers out the door, but they just don't want to look like the bad guy. So they want to make it look like to the public that, hey, we've done everything we could. We've done everything we can to keep this guy here, and we just cannot make him happy. Throwing that money at him is not going to make him happy, obviously. But again, we shall see next week once training camp hits, because we know he's going to get fined like $50,000 a day. So money talks, and you know what walks. Now, even though he didn't take the offer to extend his contract, that would have made him the highest paid player in the NFL, supposedly. Next week, or when they open training camp, that will tell a lot about where both sides really stand.
And if Aaron Rodgers doesn't show up, then I think they're immediately going to get on the phone and start shopping him. Mm-hmm. Like you mentioned, the Green Bay Packers are owned by some 400,000 stockholders. All right, there's like 5 million shares of the Green Bay Packers, and they're owned by 361,000 people. And then there's a small board that governs this team. Mm-hmm. They're unlike any other team in the NFL when it comes to that.
Right.
And so these guys that sit on this board, they're ultimately going to have to make the fans happy, or they're going to be voted off the board, and they're going to lose their job, basically. So it does make sense. I know you're speculating when you're talking about why is his name on the tip of my LaFleur, mm-hmm. and whether or not he wants Aaron in camp or on the Packers entirely.
Truly speculating.
But it does benefit everybody else up the chain, Gutekunst, and all the way up to those board members that we're speaking of, if Aaron does force his way out and absolutely demand a trade flat out, because then they have their hands are washed clean of any liability. Mm-hmm. The player himself has forced his way out. And so I see that. I just don't know how much LaFleur himself has to do with it.
Well,
really, it may be just Aaron is ready to move on. He saw what Tom did, and he's ready to check the grass out on the other side of the hill.
Right. Well, the reason I've always said LaFleur, and LaFleur said all the right things. Of course, LaFleur's first year, him and Aaron allegedly didn't really get along, or they were not on the same page. Now, since then, that hasn't been the case. Of course, the NFC Championship game last year. And they from all accounts, seem to have a good relationship. But I like to peel back the layers. And it just seems like to me, with him being the head coach, that he would have more say-so. I mean, for one, for him to sign off on them drafting Jordan Love, that said a lot to me right there. Now, granted, in my opinion, from the outside looking in, Aaron Rodgers has such a strong personality in that locker room. And LaFleur, granted, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. I mean, logical thinking would say that Matt LaFleur wants him there because that's only going to make him look better as a coach, because they're probably going to win more games. Of course, they would have to take a step back if they started Jordan Love. But I think Matt LaFleur may be willing to take that hit, knowing that he will probably get another year or two under his belt to groom Jordan Love. But I think Aaron Rodgers has such a presence in the locker room. I'm not too sure Matt LaFleur I think him and Aaron Rodgers is around the same age. I'm not too sure Matt LaFleur wants total control of that team, and he's not vouching for Aaron Rodgers maybe like he could or should. In essence, Aaron Rodgers is now mad, and he wants to leave, and he's going to do everything he can to get out the door. And Matt LaFleur is just sitting back like, hey, I like the guy. I want him here. He's saying all that. But I'm looking at him like, do you really want him there? Do you really want him there?
And the deal with these quarterbacks, the ones that have that kind of clout where they can make those kind of demands. Not every coach wants those kind of guys. Not every coach wants those quarterbacks. Even when they're the best quarterback in the world.
Right.
I mean, think about it. Bill Belichick was willing to let Tom Brady, the best quarterback that's ever walked the face of the earth, walk out of the door and go play somewhere else, because that quarterback no longer wanted to abide by the rules, where he was going to be just another cog, in the machine. And so, we talked about how there's a turning of the tide in the NFL. More players want more control. They want more involvement in the play calling, on the business side of it, and then when it comes to drafting players and signing free agents, they want input on that as well. And some coaches, a lot of coaches, they just don't want to deal with that, even if it is the greatest guy. So it wouldn't surprise me if, like you said, in the back of his mind, in the back of Matt LaFleur's mind, he's thinking, I would rather just move on, get everything I can in return, and build this thing up, whether it be around Jordan Love or around somebody else. Because ultimately what matters in the end is winning. Whenever it's all said and done, whenever Aaron retires, whenever LaFleur gets fired and he moves on to his next endeavor, all anybody's going to remember is how much did they win. And if you go and get a haul of draft picks for Aaron Rodgers, and you get players that can plug some holes as well on your defense or even on the offense, and then you can turn around come draft time, let's see how pissed off some of these fans still are when they're sitting on the board looking like the Miami Dolphins with 3 picks in the first 25. And then all of a sudden, bam, a turnaround happens almost instantly. You see it happen whenever whenever ownership allows the right guy to come in and call the shots and make the moves. We saw it in Indianapolis whenever Ballard came in and started changing the way they do things, and all of a sudden, boom, that team turned right around. How does a team come back from having its franchise quarterback just suddenly retire out of nowhere when you thought he had at least 6-7 more years in the tank, if not more?
Especially the way quarterbacks are playing.
Yeah, he retires out of. How can this franchise even bounce back from that? Yet here they are, still contending, every year, still going to the playoffs, and they've got one of the best young cores that you can think of, because they've made all the right moves. They traded back. They weren't greedy early on. They traded back in drafts early on. They picked up, picks later on in draft, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, they started to build a winner, and boom, Miami's doing the same thing in Florida, and then now you could see the same thing happen with Green Bay if they've got the cojones to pull the trigger on a trade.
You know what, too? And the reason I keep bringing up Matt LaFleur in this situation, because he's laying back in the cut. Again, he said all the right things. He's saying all the right things. But I'm keeping Matt LaFleur because you know what? If that happened, Aaron Rodgers was there before Matt LaFleur got there. And all the success that Green Bay has, or any success that they will have moving forward, Matt LaFleur knows that Aaron Rodgers is going to get most of the credit, because he's the great Aaron Rodgers. Maybe one of the top 5 quarterbacks of all time. Not maybe. I say he is one of the top 5 quarterbacks, at least talent-wise for sure. So Matt LaFleur is sitting back saying, okay, what can I do to really garner some of this credit? And hopefully we will continue to win in the process. He would have to win in order to garner the credit.
It's funny. I think about them thinking like that. I'm just like, man, if there's an NFL head coach that's thinking like that right now, his days are probably numbered.
You'd be surprised.
If his name isn't Bill Parcells, his days are numbered. Even that fat cat's days are numbered.
Well, here's the thing.
Because you see when coaches start making it personal,
it's like a do or die
things start
situation
unraveling.
Right. And see, I don't think it's a situation where, I mean, obviously, if he gets Aaron Rodgers back, he's sitting like a fat cat. He's still sitting in a good situation. But I'm just thinking it's a situation where from day one, and the way they've drafted and not had his input, and the way they've done things operating business-wise and not included him, I think he's sitting back like a fat cat saying to himself, okay, eventually Aaron is going to want to exit the door. And that's exactly what's happening now. So I think Matt LaFleur is kind of sitting back like, okay, if he leaves, I got this. It's kind of it's really what I wanted anyway. But if he stays, it's Aaron Rodgers, and we can still win, and our chances of winning more sooner than later, or even better. So I think he's like right there in the middle, like whatever happens, happens. But I don't think he's really vouching for Aaron Rodgers to really stay. I don't really think he really wants him to stay. Now, that's just my opinion from the outside looking in. Again, we shall see next week. Now, AJ Hawk, Aaron Rodgers' former teammate, and his friend has been hanging out with Aaron Rodgers. He said he thinks Aaron Rodgers is going to ultimately end up back in Green Bay and play this season because he's just too much of a competitor.
I think we heard the same thing from Donald Driver.
Yeah, I mean we did, and from James Jones. And these guys really know Aaron Rodgers really well. And Aaron Rodgers, what, 36 years old? Does he really want to sit out a year? Does he really want to sit out a year of his prime at 36 years old as a quarterback? As much of a competitor as he is,
no.
Does he really want to?
And also, I don't know if it's in his best interest to, sort of abandon that team leader role that he has. Sort of go lone wolf. I don't think we've seen a guy have, the success that Aaron's trying to achieve when they go the lone wolf route. Especially at the quarterback position where you've got to be in a position where there's 22 other guys who really have to believe in you, and they got to be following you, in lockstep. Otherwise, the whole thing just falls apart.
Yeah.
And if he were to just turn his back on his teammates and force his way out and really show himself ultimately whenever, the line's drawn and you're either going to cross it or you're going to stay on our side, ultimately to turn his back on his teammates and be selfish, that is going to carry over to wherever he goes. And he is going to have to win that locker room over. Now, it may be easy for a guy like Aaron to do that, and that team is going to be excited about their chances to win. But don't forget, the NFL is still a brotherhood. It's still a fraternity.
True.
There's going to be a lot of guys that are going to communicate across the fence to that other team and say,
right.
Hey, maybe you can't trust this guy like he's going to tell you you can, because we thought we could trust him, and now here we are. He forced his way out and left us high and dry because they drafted another freaking quarterback. Whoop-de-freaking-do.
Well, you know
when they've been on the cusp of making it to the Super Bowl for 2 years in a row.
Well, you know what? I think in today's day and age and the way these guys force themselves away from certain teams and
or up on people like Deshaun Watson. No, I'm kidding.
Right. No, we're going to talk about him in a second. That's just the way. I think most guys, now I think his teammates, just say whether it's with the Denver Broncos or wherever, of course they will be elated to have him in the fold. But I think most of these guys will understand that it's business, and that's the way people do business these days. Now, of course, Aaron Rodgers is probably looking at it like,
it's real easy to be bitter when you're on the losing end.
But you know what, too? Aaron Rodgers, I don't think Aaron Rodgers cares one way or another. They've said that he can be somewhat of an a-hole. And so I don't know if he's the most likable guy from the majority of his teammates anyway. So I don't really know how much his reputation is going to change because of it. So I think Aaron Rodgers is going to look at it like, hey, I'm making the best move for me. And again, you have guys who would agree with what you're saying, like, okay, maybe you can't trust this guy. And then I would think you would have a lot of guys, maybe the majority of the guys would be like, hey, that's just the way business is conducted these days in sports, period, not just the NFL. So, but of course you're going to have your detractors and you're going to have people that's on your side. And I don't think Aaron Rodgers really gives a hoot about any of that. I think if he feels that he has to make a power move, he's going to do what he feels is in his best interest, and that's what's going to happen. But again, it's all going to lie in the hands of Green Bay, and if they decide to move on from next week, will tell a lot. So we can continue to speculate all we want. If he doesn't report to training camp, then you may see some shaking and moving, and you may see some things happen, and then we'll really get a good feel from the thinking from these teams, from this team in particular, and Aaron Rodgers himself, when they start deducting that $50,000 from his bank account every day he misses a training camp practice. So we shall see. Now, speaking
training
of
camp,
Watson,
practice 1 for $50,000.
Practice 2, $50,000. I mean, hey, at
Sounds
some
like a
point,
Jeopardy.
I don't care how rich you are. Yeah, Jeopardy, they can pay him like $10 million, I think, but
No, I'm saying that's how they would call on it at Jeopardy. They'd be like, Aaron, practice number 1 for $50,000. He's like, what, is that a joke?
I got you. I didn't really hear the whole joke right there, but I'll tell you what.
We gotta get you some headphones, man.
I'll tell you what. He definitely, because I was talking while he definitely is a guy he has some options. And I don't know if Jeopardy is one of them right now. I think he thinks Jeopardy is one of his options right now. Who knows what he's conducted behind the scenes?
There's no way Aaron Rodgers doesn't play football. There's just
no
way he doesn't play football.
He's too much of a competitor.
There's no way he doesn't play football. I mean,
and like I said from day one, I think he's going to
the Packers would be dumb to let him
retire
retire and not just trade him because he's such a valuable asset.
And now, if I had to make a choice and I had to take a pick, I would say that he's going to play I don't know how soon he's going to report to camp. He may not report initially, still trying to hold on to, I'm not going to report. But again, once they continue to take that money out of that bank account, because I don't know if Jeopardy is ready to hire him just yet as a full-time host. And again, he's too much of a competitor like we're talking about. And he wants to continue his career and add to his legacy as a football player. Aaron Rodgers would probably love to he would love to get him another Super Bowl ring. So he's going to play.
Yeah, he probably like that.
He probably like that.
He
probably like that. But whether or not it's in Green Bay,
hot dog eating championship. What is that?
Hey, what's up on Deshaun Watson, man? Your boy
Deshaun Watson. Shots. Well, things started shaking and moving once again whenever Adam Schefter came out with a report on Deshaun Watson, and actually it was about the Philadelphia Eagles and what he's hearing. Now, he doesn't come out and say that the Eagles are making the calls and making the moves right now, but you can tell he's sort of speaking what he's seeing without being able to commit to it just yet. And he's letting people know that Philly really is preparing themselves to make a run at Deshaun Watson, and they are the most equipped to make something happen. And also, he kind of broke hearts here in Houston.
Houston, if he comes here.
Hometown kid. How could you not like him?
Absolutely.
And he's definitely still got a lot of growing he can do, and he's shown that he could play the position.
Absolutely.
If he shows up, I think he's the best quarterback on the roster.
Before Tua,
yeah. Well, if he shows up, I think he's the best quarterback on the roster once Deshaun Watson is out. No doubt about it. He's better than Tyrod. He's better than anything. He's better than Davis Mills. But Adam Schefter also reporting that he feels like Houston has mentally moved on from Deshaun Watson. They've already got it in their mind that he's not going to play for them ever again. And I know there's a lot of people like me, that are hoping that, here in 8 days, that he won't be on the commissioner's exempt list and that there's a chance he'll want to be playing football. And if those two things are true and the Texans aren't trading him, then maybe he puts on a Texans uniform and gets on that practice field. If he starts to play, then I think, that opens up a whole bunch of possibilities. He could be a Texan for the entire season. He could be traded in the middle of the season. There's all kinds of things that could happen. But, Texans fans are people who are fans of the Texans and Deshaun Watson and would like to see him stay, know that the first step has to be him just getting back in the building. And here in 8 days, we're going to find out if he's going to be eligible to get back in the building or if not, if he's going to go on the commissioner's exempt list or not. If he doesn't, then either he's going to hold out and not show up and get fined $50,000, or he's going to force the Texans to tell him to stay away, which I don't see them doing that either. So then all of a sudden, maybe it accelerates the timeline on this whole thing. Deshaun Watson gets traded, or lo and behold, it looks like there could be a possible reconciliation on the horizon. That is the least likely of scenarios, but until we get to the start of training camp and until we find out whether or not Deshaun Watson is going to go on the commissioner's exempt list, and until the Texans are forced to make a move and show their hand, we're not going to know whether or not he'll ever be a Texan again.
You know what?
And it still remains a possibility, so you can hold your breath if you want.
I think it's a very strong possibility. I honestly do not think.
And that would put you in the minority because most people feel like there's no way, including one John McClain, thinks there's no way he's going to play for the Texans ever again.
Unless he decides to sit out.
I think they'd be crazy to not consider it. If you wanted to come back, you have to welcome back with open arms.
That's just it. It's not. Franchise quarterbacks do not fall off trees. So I don't think the Texans, with this new head coach, as much as Deshaun Watson has vowed that he would never play for the Texans and that he wants out, I honestly do not think the Texans want to part ways with a guy of his caliber that great on the football field. What I think is happening is there hasn't been any kind of resolution as far as the civil cases and things of that sort. The NFL has not ruled. Now, we may know more next week about what the NFL decides to do. But the Texans are in a precarious situation because right now, if they make a move with Deshaun Watson right now with no resolution on his civil outcome and where he stands as far as the NFL exempt list, they can get lowballed by any team right now. So they want to get a haul for Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
So
and here's the deal.
They don't know what's going to happen with him, so they're not going to make any moves because they know these teams are going to lowball.
Yeah, and here's the deal. Adam Schefter also reported, this whole story came
because
about
these
from
teams don't know the outcome
exactly
themselves.
from his appearance on the podcast, on a podcast. So he was saying a lot of things, but he also said that Houston is not going to take a discount on Deshaun Watson. They already know enough about the situation, and this is just speculation, but Houston must already know enough about the situation to where it's not going to end Deshaun Watson's career. Most likely his suspension isn't going to be an indefinite one. It's going to have a timetable to it. And even if it is, upwards of near the majority or the entire 2021 season, as young as Deshaun Watson is, he still holds tremendous value. So there's no reason for the Texans to take a low ball offer. They're not in a position where where they have to move Deshaun Watson. If anything, let's say he goes on the commissioner's exempt list, he may stay on the commissioner's exempt list, and that may be the best thing for both parties while he sits out, while he gets his legal stuff settled, and the Texans don't have to worry about what they're going to do with him just yet, and then they can worry about their rebuild. They can worry about Davis Mills, the likes of those guys, and then whenever Deshaun gets his legal trouble behind him, then they can go and make whatever move they're going to make, whether it's welcoming him back into the building or if it's trading him for a humongous haul.
Right.
But one thing that they're not going to do is feel like they have to make a deal today, like they have to make a deal tomorrow, like they have to jump on the train and go somewhere. They're just going to sit tight until the Eagles, the Dolphins, or whoever it may be offers up, the biggest haul they can offer. And the thing about the no trade clause that Deshaun Watson had, you got to feel like if you're Deshaun and you really don't want to be in Houston, you're not going to nix the best trade that the Texans can get, because then you're just killing their incentive to move you.
Absolutely.
Especially whenever you're coming off of, what he's coming off the field. Now, if you take that out of the equation, I think it's a completely different story. But now that Deshaun Watson has that, it would behoove him to just be happy to go wherever the Texans can move him. Help the Texans help you if you really want to go play somewhere else.
Well, from all the teams that they've speculated him going to, I don't see why he wouldn't go to Miami. I don't see why he wouldn't go to Philadelphia.
And then it becomes a bidding war.
But again, the only thing, and we can both agree that the only thing that's holding it up right now is there hasn't been any resolution to what's going to happen with him with these civil cases. And so,
do you think that it's a given that he has to go on the commissioner exempt list?
Handcuffed, as well as other teams, because other teams do not want to mortgage their future, not knowing exactly what's going to go on with him.
Yeah, but then, this isn't a hot meal. The shelf life on this asset is extremely long. It's not going bad. It's not going to sour if you leave it sitting out on the counter overnight. He's going to retain his value. Right, and teams are going to be ready to jump in on the talks, I should say, as soon as he's cleared to play.
Yeah.
Or as soon as there's any type of finality in those cases. Now, let me ask you this.
But again,
do you think that he's going to... Well, and they would like other teams around the league to believe they're going to keep him, because that's going to keep driving the price up. They're going to try to pry Deshaun away from them and use whatever it takes. Because that type of quarterback, like you mentioned, it's a once-in-a-generation type of talent.
Right.
You can name, the five. Think about the 5 best quarterbacks in the league. I don't think you can name them without mentioning Deshaun Watson. It's really hard to do. And if you do, I guarantee you 3 of those guys won't be playing in the league in the next, 2 years. You know what I'm saying? 2 to 3 of those guys, because Brady's going to be moving on. Rodgers, who we were just talking about, eventually is going to be moving on. There's room up at the top. Young quarterbacks, if you got one, you're primed for success. If you're the Buffalo Bills, if you're the Kansas City Chiefs, the Ravens, you got these young quarterbacks, you're set. You're set to make a run. You can do things. You don't have one of these guys, you're lost. So everybody's going to be chomping at the bit to get somebody who's already shown that they can perform at a top 5 level, on the field with the best players in the world.
I think the Texans will take their chances on a disgruntled quarterback, hoping that he will eventually get over it, and that's someone that they can continue to build around, because they need a lot of pieces to go with Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson, like I said before, when all this first went down with him saying that he wanted out, I think a lot of that not only had to do with the way he saw the organization and the way they run things, in his opinion, but also the lack of talent and the holes that they have on this team.
Some would say I got to get out of here before these women start talking.
Well,
I got to get the hell out.
That too.
I got to get to Miami.
Busby, you saw your boy Busby taking shots at him, talking about he actually went and got a massage, and he was talking about how his massage was professional, and he didn't come across like some horny teenager. Obviously taking veil shots at Deshaun Watson. Of course, this is right a week before camp, so that's probably to deter any team that may be interested in Deshaun Watson and actually making him happy by getting out of town.
Well, I gotta
put this in the news right now about Deshaun Watson, but even though I'm not going to say his name, let me say that I had a massage, and it was very professional. The woman didn't feel threatened, and I didn't have to unrobe. Oh, man, he took some shots at Deshaun Watson.
Let me remind people that Deshaun Watson
wanting to build around him.
Deshaun Watson is only 8 years removed or 6 years removed from being a teenager, while Busby, I think he might have teenagers or young adults as children. So it's easy. It's easy for an old man in his 50s, 60s, or whatever the hell Busby's in. Damn near his 70s. It's easy for him. It's easy for him to lay there and say, "Oh yeah, I didn't act like a teenager." Well, yeah, you're a 50-year-old man.
I wasn't grounded on the table.
I'm not trying to absolve Deshaun Watson of responsibility for whatever his actions are. All I'm saying is that he still is a young man, and we still don't know what the hell his actions are. I've heard.
That's why I brought it up.
I hear multiple people coming up in arms.
He was out of bounds for that.
Yeah, this is it's a court case. This is what you get from lawyers. You're gonna have them go in the media and say this, say that, and the other.
That's true.
That's what happens whenever you put yourself,
It was a fail shot. It was a cheap shot.
In a position where you're being sued for something. That's what happened.
But the timing of it, once again, the timing of it is right a week before training camp starts, and just the timing of it, I thought was very...
Well, yeah, because everything's been quiet. So when everything's quiet, you get a chance to throw a cheap shot in there. Guys like Busby are going to take it, especially when you're in the cutthroat world of civil law. He's going to take shots. That's his job.
I agree with that.
But I've heard a lot of people being disgruntled, thinking that the NFL's really dragging their feet with Deshaun Watson. They should have made a decision already. It's obvious that Deshaun Watson should be, and I'm saying this is what people's thoughts are. It's obvious he should be on the commissioner's exempt list. There's no way you leave him off the list. And maybe I'm right there with you, Greg. There's still so much unknown about this whole ordeal with Deshaun Watson. Yeah, there's a lot of women on these lawsuits, but right after the lawsuits were filed, we heard that there's a handful of women that still worked with Deshaun after their claimed incident. So you could probably throw those lawsuits out, even though we haven't heard that yet. You can cross off this, that, and the other for this. So-and-so lied about that. This person wasn't saying, was saying one thing when actually it was another thing. And it's on both sides. There's so much still up in the air, so much that we don't know, that it doesn't surprise me that the NFL hasn't put him on the commissioner's exempt list. And like you mentioned, no criminal charges filed, and that still says a lot. That still carries a lot of weight with the NFL, because even though you have that number of cases, you would think if there's 22 different accounts, you'd at least find some evidence or enough evidence to make one charge, which as of right now, we have not heard coming out of HPD.
That's what I've said all along, and not to be insensitive, and if these allegations are true, he should be punished for it. But since Busby wants to be so clever, and he wants to placate to the media and do all these things and take all these veiled shots, because that's what a lawyer is supposed to do, okay, that's fine. But again, where's your video evidence? Show me some video evidence. And like we're saying, no criminal charges have been filed. So until I see something set in stone, that's why Deshaun Watson and his camp, they're doing the right thing by staying quiet in the situation. Let this guy be a clown. Let him be all clever in the media and say all he wants to say. What they're doing, they're sitting back saying, where's the video evidence? That's why they're denying all the allegations. Not some of them, all of them.
This case, it's at a stalemate, Greg. Neither.
It wouldn't be at a stalemate if they had video evidence.
But look, what I'm saying is they don't have to prove Deshaun is guilty of this to win. That's the thing. They've already won in the sense that there's gonna be a settlement. If anything else, either they could take it to trial and lose. But right now, it's in everybody's interest, probably, for them to make a settlement if it comes out that he can settle with these cases and then play football this year. I think that's what he'll do.
But
I've heard.
I don't think so. It may be in his best interest, but at the end of the day, the reason why I think Deshaun and them are denying every allegation is the fact that they don't want to settle with no one because he's trying to protect his name in this situation right now. If he settles, he's ultimately saying that I'm guilty of these charges.
Well,
granted, you can say, okay, I'm just doing what I think is best for me to further my career, but I don't think Deshaun is at least for right now. I don't think Deshaun is operating like that. I think he's operating from a sense like I'm completely innocent. Now, granted, 22 people.
Well, here's the reports that I've heard,
Greg. Out there, but
the reports say that they would settle right now. The only thing is that there is a disagreement in what is going to be allowed to be said after the settlement.
Oh.
So Deshaun wants there to be a settlement, and he wants everything to be shut down. There's going to be no more talk about it. There's going to be non-disclosure agreements. There's going to be what are the other ones? I forget what they call them, but gag orders and such where they can't talk about it. And the other side, Busby and his 22 clients, they want Deshaun Watson to admit this, admit that, and the other. And that's where this case has come to a stalemate.
Okay.
Neither side can win this case, I don't think, on their own. Because if they could, we would already know it's going to trial. Okay. Watson can't prove that he didn't exactly do this. They can't exactly prove that he did.
Right.
But they find themselves in the middle where a settlement is best for both parties. Because going to trial and then having 22 people drag Deshaun Watson's name through the mud, I think that's the last thing Deshaun Watson wants, whether it's true or not. It's just not a pretty sight. Not a pretty sight. So if you can settle and move on, I think that's what they want to do.
Okay. Well, we shall see. But the last reports I heard, now I hadn't followed the case like you, obviously, but I thought Deshaun Watson was steadfast on, I'm not paying any money. I'm denying all these allegations. You don't have any video evidence. Now, they haven't said that, but I bet that's what his lawyer is thinking.
Yeah.
And so if we have to go to court, again, how are you going to prove? His name has already been dragged through the mud.
Yeah.
I mean, so if they have to go to court and they can't prove it, I mean, he's probably looking at it like, I'm not paying a damn thing because they can't prove
the thing about it in civil
court. My name
court,
has already been dragged through the mud anyway. So if we go to court and they bring it all up again, what I have to lose?
The thing about it is that if it was a criminal trial, okay, because in a criminal trial you gotta prove beyond a reasonable doubt.
The judge can still side with the.
In a civil trial, you don't have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. You just have to approve based on a preponderance of the evidence, like just based on. Whatever, if the jury thinks, okay, there's a chance he did this or whatever, they don't have to say, no, there's no reasonable doubt whatsoever, without reasonable doubt. They don't have to prove it that factually. They just have to feel like, he probably did this.
Chance that he did
and then here we are, we're in Texas. I do not think a jury's going to go in Deshaun Watson's favor. I don't think a trial's going to go in Deshaun Watson's favor. I think ultimately a settlement would get that guy on the field this season.
They probably want to dismiss.
Well, of course they want to dismiss, but I want $1 million
before trial. So okay, so you know more about the case than me in that regard. That okay, so they've made a settlement offer, and now they're just trying to come to grips.
Back and forth.
Right.
Well,
so
the
now
reports
are
that's where the disagreement
lies. Leaked out and this and that. Okay, I got you.
What is he going to admit to? What are these girls going to admit to? This, that, and the other. And then also dollar amounts. Because they're going to feel like not every girl is entitled to the same amount as, let's say, Ashley Solis, who was the first, the first one to file against Deshaun Watson.
I was just under the impression that I thought he was going to fight it to the end and be like, hey, I'm completely innocent of this. And it snowballed. This one person or two people turned into 22 people. And that's what it was.
You take that stance in the media.
But what you're saying makes sense, though. In a civil case, they don't have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt.
No.
I just thought Deshaun was going to.
You take that stance in the media, and then you let your lawyers handle things behind closed doors.
Absolutely.
And then when your lawyer's telling you this is what's best, that's what you do.
That's what his lawyers.
And I mean, they could fight it, but like we're sitting here talking, training camp's 8 days away. If this thing were to go to trial, the trial wouldn't start till March next year?
Yeah.
Maybe he wouldn't even be deposed until February. So I don't think it could start in March. It might even start the summer of next year. So are we talking about Deshaun Watson being in limbo for another year, a full calendar year? I just don't see it happening. I think that ultimately, even if he's got to give in a little and pay a little bit more, he's going to, because let's face it, this guy's gonna make a lot of money in the future.
Okay.
All right. The sooner we're talking about Deshaun Watson throwing touchdowns instead of throwing towels over his junk, the sooner that things are going to be better in his world. Right now, it's a catastrophe.
Well, yeah. I mean, he would definitely have a resolution.
There's just a lot of incentive to do a settlement.
No, that makes a lot of sense. But
rather than
I didn't really know that's where,
even if you're innocent.
I didn't really know that's where Deshaun Watson was operating. I thought he was operating from the stance like, I'm going to fight this to the end and I'm not paying a dime. But that's how out of touch I am with the case. So
no, I mean, I know that they came out and said that initially, but that's the stance you want to take in the public.
Right.
It's like, just like we're going to come out and say we're not trading the guy,
but things have
changed. Behind closed doors,
things have changed.
If you want to come with the right offer, then we'll trade. We're not settling unless you settle for $1 million. Okay, then we're settling. There's so many different ways this thing can break, but I think if it goes to trial, it's just going to be a bad look.
Well, if it goes
for
to trial,
Deshaun.
You're right. That will be another year from now, maybe. And that, okay, I got you. So that's where Deshaun is operating.
And then you gotta convince a team to go. Yeah, you got to convince a team to still want to go with you after. Hearing every single individual count, not just word of mouth, not some YouTube video, but there's going to be
in detail.
There's going to be detailed stenography that you can
this.
Go back through and read.
I will say this,
and that is not going. I mean, teams are just going to end up taking him off their board.
Well, you know what? I will say this. Now, this is forgiving country for sure. And what will happen is, in a situation like that, no one has been murdered. Now, I'm not saying every team. No one has been murdered. He's not on drugs. He hasn't been known to be an alcoholic, so they would just look at him as a horny guy.
No, I get it. Just where it hurts teams is whenever certain organizations.
But that talent right there.
When certain organizations start to use their pocket or their checkbook to hit the organization that goes with Deshaun Watson or that backs Deshaun Watson, when they start to hit them in their pocketbook, with their checkbook, okay, we're going to pull, if he goes to New Orleans, we're going to pull Mercedes-Benz off the Superdome.
You know what?
We're going to do this, that, and the other. And that's where it gets tricky.
And that's why I said that when he first got put in this situation, I said, watch, he's going to lose a lot of endorsements because of it. Even though it's hearsay, I said he's going to lose a lot of endorsements. And I mean, the very next day, he was dropped by Nike, I think it was, and a few other people. So I get that, but I just mean the public perception. As far as the public perception, right. I think a lot of guys are going to actually be like, okay, this is just a horny guy right here.
Yeah.
I mean, men and women. But
we can say that. We can fist bump each other and all that,
But these teams,
when it comes to
these teams, yeah. I mean, but these teams, I still think a guy of his caliber, and there's no criminal charges, I still think a guy of his caliber can still pretty much choose where. I don't think these teams will really turn their back on him because of the public relations. I really just think Deshaun Watson is that good.
It would be
and
hard
we've
for
seen
them
guys who's done worse. I'm talking about, and they get on these teams because these teams want to win. When we're talking about a quarterback of his caliber, now what you're saying makes a lot of sense. The public relations part of it, you would think that they would be very careful because a lot of people may pull out on the money aspect of it, but they would probably vet that situation beforehand, I would think, and you would see a lot of teams take some chances because this guy is so great.
You have to think, though. I mean, you have to look and see that whatever team trades for Deshaun Watson, they're going to give up a whole lot. Whether it's players currently on the roster, we know it's going to be picks. But whether it's players currently on the roster, too, we don't know. But the haul's going to be huge. There's no guarantee that, he lands on his feet wherever he's at and they immediately start winning. They may still need to lick their wounds and rebuild and get some, second and third round draft picks in there and try to get players around Deshaun Watson. I'm not so sure any other team besides maybe Miami. Seeing how, because they've had so many draft picks last year,
I think Philly's going to be better than a lot of people think.
Oh, well, I mean, I think that about Philly almost every year, and then it just depends on how healthy they are. But I lost my fucking train of thought, man.
Well, basically, you were saying that you don't know if he's going to hit the ground running.
Wherever he goes, if, like I said, if it's not Miami, probably wherever he goes, they're going to have to build around him for a few years. It's not going to happen right away. So that changes their thinking. Whenever if we're going to have to face maybe being mediocre or being what the Texans have been for the past couple years, we have to be that, and we're going to lose some big sponsorship, with the Me Too movement and all that stuff. That's the only way where outside forces can have an impact on this situation. They can have an impact on where Deshaun Watson goes, because they can say, we will pull major sponsorship, and teams might be like, damn, man, we really want Deshaun, but ultimately, if we got to give up 3 first-round picks and we got to lose this big sponsorship, then maybe it's just not worth it.
Yeah. Again, they would have to vet the situation with everybody that's their sponsor, for one. And again, and I agree with that in most scenarios, and there may be a team or two here and there, but I think with the talent level of this guy, whatever they lose in that regard, eventually they probably feel that they can gain it back. And as time goes on, people will start to actually be more forgiving, and they could eventually make that money back up, for one, because there'll be a winning franchise, and that's going to garner more sponsors and things of that sort. So I think you may have a team that thinks like that initially,
right,
and you may have a lot of teams that think like that. Right. But at the same time, I think you may have teams that feel the other way, like,
well, it only takes one.
This guy is such a tremendous talent that whatever hit we take public relations-wise right now, he's going to make our team that much better. Being a franchise quarterback, for one, this is a forgiving country.
You're definitely right about
and
that.
He hasn't murdered anybody. And I think they would look at it as, hey, things happen, and he wasn't charged criminally.
I mean, yeah, they can feel about it however
eventually we can make all that back up, because we're going to be a winning franchise.
They can feel about it
I just think
they
there will be more people willing
to
take chances.
It's just how is it going to be received?
But what you're saying is compelling, though. I mean, that's how most logical companies should think. The problem is, in the real world, it doesn't always happen like that.
Yeah.
When it comes, especially sports and football, when it comes to a tremendous talent that can help change the trajectory of your franchise on the football field, and then what follows when they get better on the football field, that's when the money and the sponsors and everything starts coming back to them because of their winning ways. And I think you will find most people thinking in that regard, instead of thinking with how they probably should think, which is what you're saying.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, fans definitely, they're the easiest body of people to win back over.
Business-wise.
You go out there and win.
Business-wise.
Yeah,
business-wise.
Business, to me, there's a bit of a variable there, because they, like I mentioned before, they can sort of sway things one way or the other using money as their power. When you look at a lot of these big organizations, what are they're run by, old white guys who may feel like Deshaun Watson, a black quarterback, got off too easy. If he doesn't get suspended for a long, for a year, he doesn't end up having to, go to trial, be on a stand, doesn't have to pay a whole bunch of money, and ends up being, say $100,000 spread for each victim or whatever. Ends up not being. You feel like Deshaun Watson gets a slap on the wrist. Let's just sum it all up in that. Then I could see some of these big corporations feeling like they're going to do everything they can to make sure that he gets the punishment that they feel like he deserves, because people are starting to stand up for the disenfranchised and for the undefendable, and women are certainly on that list.
Well, you definitely don't want to be insensitive to the situation and make like that you're not advocating women's rights and making sure that they're the ones being taken care of in a situation like that. So I can definitely see that by a lot of people, and I can also see the other side as well. And you may be right. The fact that he's a black quarterback, that may have a lot to do with it. But the fact that he isn't charged criminally, I think that has a lot to do with it as well. And maybe some of these corporations will look at it as, hey, it was he say, she say, and granted, he doled out a lot of money, but you know what? This is Deshaun Watson. Now he's paid his dues as far as the NFL suspension and things of that sort. And again,
it's going to take him too, like not just being a guy that shuts up and goes to work and just does his job and goes home. Like, no, he's going to have to. We mentioned in the past, he's going to have to be an advocate. He's going to have to get out there and show that he's sorry. Whether he wants to admit wrongdoing or not, he's got to take responsibility for even being in that position.
In that situation.
Right. And then on top of that, he's got to win back. He's got to win back people's trust, because a lot of people looked at this guy as a guy with who was unscathed and who was pure. I mean, let's face it. I mean, a lot of guys thought you would talk if we mentioned this. Something like this happened. Like if somebody predicted this would happen to Deshaun Watson, we would have laughed his ass off the set. And we would have never guessed it.
And you know what? That's another thing too, that he may get the benefit of the doubt from a lot of these teams in that regard because here's a guy that had his past was uncheckered. I mean, he was looked at as a great character guy. Now I can see if this is something right
even
here
going back to childhood,
that's falling in line, right? That's falling in line with a long line of and a long history of him misbehaving and having bad character and having bad things said about him. But here's a guy that hasn't had anything bad said about him. And again, this is a he say, she say situation. And you may find some people who feel like you're saying that, okay, well, we need to punish him anyway. But again, that money talks and BS walks. Now, money talks in your regard. You're saying that a lot of these corporations will pull out because they may lose sponsorship. And obviously, we've seen him already lose some.
I mean, I honestly think, Greg, a lot of that also had to do with. I mean, I know they're two different caliber players, but I think a lot of that had to do with the Colin Kaepernick and when he was kneeling and teams wanting to bring him in, and then corporate sponsorship having a problem with it and making it known that if this guy comes to this team and kneels over here, we're out. You know, and I know I cannot speak on it to where tell you who it is, but I know that there was some rumblings about that here in Houston. Whenever Houston might be a potential suitor to bring in Colin Kaepernick, that there were some high-end corporate sponsors that were having none of it.
Yeah, and that was a different situation.
It is different, but it is a
different situation. But I feel what you're saying
right.
on that. But it was a different
comparable.
When it comes right. But he had an uproar, and that was more of a race issue. Even though, like we're saying, of course you want women's rights, and you want to make sure that they're protected, and you do not want to come across as insensitive to women's rights and things of that sort. But again, I mean, what Colin Kaepernick did was so out there in your face, and he divided so many people. He divided a country almost, and they may have looked at that as different than someone where women are saying this to maybe garner gain financially,
right.
And it probably just snowball. So I don't know, man. It all depends on how you want to look at it from the perspective of, okay, are these women just money hungry, and are they trying to gain some things financially? Because I've even said, when they had the press conference with a few of these women, I said, if you really listen to them, they sound very, very compelling. But like you were saying too, sometimes your lawyer can coach you up in a sense. And again, not to say that Deshaun Watson is not guilty of a lot of these charges, or at least a couple of them, but 22, just think about how outlandish that sounds. And from the outside looking in, that sounds so dramatic, it almost makes me not believe that 20 of them are not true. So how well were they coached up to get on there and say these things? Not saying that they were, but that's possible as well. So we'll see with a lot of these corporations and a lot of these teams what side they take.
And
if they say, let's just throw that to a side and just
what it may end up being, Greg, is it may end up being that a lot of these scenarios were instances that really pushed the envelope and pushed it to the brink of maybe being something that was illegal or something that you could be sued over, something that was not unwanted advances, something that was harassment or whatever you want to call it, a sexual assault. I think that you may see that some of these instances were right on the line, where maybe Deshaun Watson was pushing the envelope and maybe he didn't cross the line, but he pushed it enough to where these women felt uncomfortable. And that is probably the main reason why I think it's in his best interest to not go to trial, because then everybody else can sort of make their judgment on where the line is, how far is too far, when we all know that these athletes operate in a different world than you and I live in, and not that it makes it right, wrong, or indifferent. It's just the way that it is.
Well, most of them feel entitled. Feel entitled.
But a lot of them get it thrown right at them too, either way, whether they're entitled or not.
Right. So
doesn't mean they can go around taking what they want. I'm just saying, it's a different world.
That if they went to trial, it'll be a lot of dirty laundry being aired. But it's all about, okay, who are you really going to believe? And again, a lot of that will sound compelling. So to your point about him settling, I mean, maybe that may be the best thing. But again, I hadn't been following a case like that. I thought he was steadfast on, I'm going to fight this to the end. I'm not settling. I'm not doling out any money, because ultimately that would be me admitting my guilt, and therefore I can't clear my name.
No, he's put himself in a position where he probably is not going to clear his name.
Now.
He's going to have to clear his name over time, like we talked about.
Yeah.
And the sooner he gets back to playing football, the sooner he's going to have a chance to do that.
Right.
The clock doesn't start ticking on that until he's back on the field.
The court's going to have to make a ruling at some point to help them out in that regard. And these guys will have to come. They're going to have to come to some kind of agreement on some settlement if that's the case. And the NFL is going to have to come to some kind of settlement or some kind of resolution on what they're going to do.
The NFL's hoping that this thing gets settled with all the NDLs you could sign, and that nobody has to speak about it ever again, because they need Deshaun Watson. Now I know they've got a good young stable of quarterbacks, faces of the league. Starting at the top with Patrick Mahomes, and you can go on down through Allen, Jackson, the whole lot of them. All right, Baker Mayfield, Deshaun Watson. They do not need this guy ending up being, a what's the word I'm looking for? A black mark on the league. Yeah. They need him to be one of the faces of the NFL going forward, even if it ends up being a comeback story or a rehabilitation story, or where a young guy almost went down a bad path, but was able to come back and get things back on the right track. The NFL needs that to happen to Deshaun Watson, because if it goes the other way, it's not going to look good for the NFL. It's not going to look good because of the way they handled the entire situation. It's almost like they wanted to look the other way from the very beginning until they forced it in front of their face.
That's why I was saying a lot of the things I was saying earlier. I think in that regard, I think a lot of people will look the other way in this particular situation, because it hasn't been anything proven. Right. Even though it seems so dramatic with 22 accusers, I mean, where's the proof? We shall see.
Hey, but even with that amount, even though it looks bad, but even with that amount, even though it sounds outlandish, it doesn't mean that it didn't happen.
It doesn't mean that it didn't happen.
And I mean, don't you
it doesn't.
You ever watch them old? You ever watch them old murderer stories?
I'd probably be more inclined if they said 4 accusers or something like that. But 22, I mean, come on.
Well, I'm saying, you ever watch them old TV shows about old murders, about old serial killers or whatever, and they found 85 bodies buried out back, and they're like, 80 freaking 5, like how? And then, but the guy was having coffee with the neighbor on his front porch every morning, but they don't know he killed all these people. It's not out of the realm of possibility. It sounds outlandish, and the Deshaun Watson that we know, we're like, that guy wouldn't do that. But it's still a real possibility that all that stuff happened, and maybe even more. Who knows?
We'll never know.
But the sooner football's being played and that's not being talked about, the sooner Deshaun Watson can get back to being D4.
Yeah, because I'm ready for him. I mean, I'm ready for something to happen in that regard. I mean, is he going to be with the Texans? Is he not going to be with the Texans? Is he going to be in the exhibit list for 8 games or what? But you know what? Enough about Deshaun Watson. We're speculating. I'm giving my side of it on what I think may happen or may not happen if he is back in the league. You're saying some things on why you think certain teams.
I'm always saying some things when I can remember what the hell I'm talking about.
And so we're merely speculating right now, and we shall see what these teams decide. If they really want Deshaun Watson as much as they're letting on, and what teams may not want him because of the situation that he's in right now, at the end of the day, I think talent is going to rule over more than anything. Even though money rules, I think people will probably be willing to take a hit initially to get a guy of that caliber in the building. But we shall see. We shall see. Now, real quick, you see where Allen Robinson, what should the Bears do with him, Eddie? You have Justin Fields now in the fold. He needs a go-to guy. You need to sign Allen Robinson to a long-term deal. Should have been signed to a long-term deal. You have Justin Fields. Speaking of Justin Fields, Eddie, Justin Fields, do you know who was a fan in Chicago? Scott Morrow, who was a victim of a shooting, an innocent guy who was a victim of a shooting, got caught randomly in the crossfire of a shooting, thought he was going to die, lost a spleen and a kidney. And what he said on his hospital bed was, if I die, I'm not going to be able to see Justin Fields play ball. Justin Fields, when he gave him a signed jersey, met the guy. Great move by Justin Fields. Glad that guy survived. He's doing good now. Scott Morrow, glad he survived. But Justin Fields, if you're going to draft him that high to be your quarterback, you need to have a guy of Allen Jackson's caliber. He's the only guy that was any kind of spark for that offense last year.
Who's this Allen Jackson? You talking about Allen Jackson, the country singer?
I'm talking about Allen. I'm talking about Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson.
I had to get you with that one. Alan Jackson's a country singer, man. I'm thinking Alan Jackson. You've been listening to the country?
Allen Robinson.
Look. The Bears. He's got one more year on his contract.
Right on.
And I think they'd be doing themselves a disservice if they didn't see how those two guys operate on the field together. And I'm not just talking about in practice. Coming off of back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, and let me go a little bit further. I know he's got. I think the year before that he was injured, only had 754 yards. But you go back to 2015, 1,400 yards in 2 seasons where he's marred by injury, and then last year he comes back 1,100 yards, then 1,200 yards. This guy is a big-time receiver. He knows how to get down the field and get open. He knows how to catch the ball in the red zone. These are 2 things that the Bears are going to need if they're going to have success with Justin Fields.
And he moves the chains on 3rd down.
And let's face it, look, there's no need for them to make a move right now. You go out there, you see how Justin Fields and with the holster of players he has now, you see how they perform early on the first 6 games or so. When's the trade deadline? Did they move it back to week 10 now? I think it is. It used to be week 8. It was week 10. It was like week 6 and week 8, and I think it's week 10 now. You can make a trade.
Actually a pastor.
The Pastor Alan Jackson, as well as a country singer.
That I watch on TVN sometimes. Go ahead.
You wait until those 10 games. You see how they play, and if it's looking like y'all may have a magical season, then you keep Allen Robinson around and you see about re-signing the guy. If you have no interest in Allen Robinson beyond this season, after what you've seen early on in the 2021 campaign, then you trade him. And I don't think it has anything to do with Allen. I think if they get out there and they realize that by taking out Mitchell Trubisky, inserting Justin Fields, leaving a lot of the stuff still the same besides your basic moves in the offseason, if that gets them to, a division championship or gets them into the playoffs, then I think they may say, hey, we want to keep Allen Robinson around. We'll spend big money on him because we're a lot closer to winning than we thought we were.
They did tag him.
Yeah, no, I know that, but I'm saying as far as looking to re-sign him.
Yeah, I know.
Because if they're going into this season and Justin Fields is struggling and they're looking like they're going to be a 4 or 5 win team and they're a little bit further away than they may want to be, then there's no incentive for them to keep an aging Robinson. You trade him while he's
27.
Well, I know that, but he's an old 27.
Is he?
And yes, he is, because he's had 2 knee injuries.
Okay.
And this is a guy.
That's it right there.
Yeah, and that's the only time he hasn't been productive is whenever he's had knee injuries, and that's why the Jaguars were okay with moving on from him, and if the Bears move on from him, that's why they will be. But you look at 2019, 2020, he's been mostly healthy. He had some games where he was out. He didn't play the whole season, but he's played enough to make a huge impact. You're getting around 100 catches. You're averaging 100 catches over those 2 seasons and over 1,000 yards. That's good. But when you're a young team with a young quarterback and you're looking to build for a strong future that's going to continuously put you, in the playoffs and able to make a run for a Super Bowl, then maybe Allen Robinson, you may be better off getting what you can for Allen Robinson if you're going to suck in 2021 and then using what you get to build a better 2022 team moving forward.
Okay. I can see that side of it as well. So that's
because right now his trade value is as high as it's ever been, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons,
right.
6+
So that's why I was
touchdowns.
going with that. I mean, he's been very productive the last couple of years, and he's been really the only spark on that Chicago Bears offense. So how it relates to Justin Fields, if you draft him and you know he's going to be your guy, I think the way you speed his process up is by making sure that receiver, he has a number 1 guy now he's a number 1 threat, and he's happy, and he's a guy that's going to be that outlet for Justin Fields. Now, granted, he will be there this year, but of course you don't want to disgruntle Allen Robinson. If you would have signed him, he probably would even be happier right now, and his production probably would have even been elevated even more and really helped Justin Fields really evolve even that much more quicker as a quarterback. So I definitely think, now granted, he is there this year, so.
But I mean, I'm just saying, like.
No, I know what you're saying. If they can get something for him,
well,
and they feel that he's not the guy moving forward.
But I'm also saying,
that's going to be a great player.
Right. If you're only gonna win 4 or 5 games this season, you can trade him, get whatever you can for him, and then go and get you a Garrett Wilson, a Chris Olave, one of these.
That could be how they're thinking.
Well, you know what I'm saying? And get you reboot with a guy who's been catching footballs from your number 1 star now.
That could be.
It makes perfect sense, So I mean,
think he just feels
you don't have to always
that
feel
money.
tied to the guy you have, but I mean, he's certainly certainly I don't see Justin Fields complaining if they re-sign
Right,
Allen Robinson and
right.
they keep him around. But, it
But the thing about
may
it,
work out better in the long run if they go after a guy like Wilson or Olave. If they see
you know, I love Olave.
6 games in that they're not going to win a lot of games this year, because
Right.
it's going to be another good wide receiver class next year as well.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So we shall see. I just wanted to get your take on Allen Robinson, and do you think the Bears should have signed him? You say that it may behoove them to check him out this year and then see what he's probably going to add for the future. But definitely Justin Fields is happy that he's there, and I'm glad that he is at least there for the
I'm surprised
next
you
year,
didn't jump out of your chair when I brought up Wilson and Olave. Usually you get to shaking and jiving when I started talking about Buckeyes teaming up in the NFL.
Speaking of the Buckeyes just signed 2 major recruits. Let me see now. They just signed another guy. You know, I wrote this down right here. They just signed a guy that committed to the Buckeyes to finish off their 2021 class. His name is JT Tui Maloa, defensive end, 5-star recruit from Washington. He committed to the Buckeyes to go along with Jack Sawyer from Pickerton, Ohio. So they're going to be held in the same regard as Bosa, the Bosa brothers, and those guys. So the Buckeyes with the number 2 class again in college football as far as the recruiting goes. Of course, the Alabama Crimson Tide signed Tyler Booker. He signed with Bama. He's a 4-star recruit. So he's committed to Alabama. He chose them over the Buckeyes, Georgia, Florida, and I want to say Oregon, I think it is. But he signed with the Crimson Tide. But you know I'm always hyped about the Buckeyes. And we'll see what Olave and those guys bring. Obviously, they're going to have that veteran presence in Allen Robinson this year. So that's where it's going to benefit Justin Fields. Now, when they draft one of these young guys, they will have to hit the ground running immediately. But in order for Justin Fields to really propel his career like immediately moving forward in a good regard, I think Allen Robinson is a guy that's probably, you want him happy that he's in the building, and you want him feeling like he's going to be there for years to come to really get the best out of him. But I can see the way Chicago, if they're operating from that perspective, like you're saying, like they're going to see. See, I didn't realize he had those injuries to that regard, that 2 major knee injuries. But the last couple of years, he's proved himself. He feels that he's definitely worthy of a contract. And obviously the Bears feel that they're going to wait it out and see. But granted, Justin Fields has his go-to guy for this upcoming season. And maybe for years to come, a veteran presence. Then they draft those guys. Allen Robinson can tutor those guys that they bring in, like Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, and things like that. And we'll also talk about next week, Eddie. We will talk about, I want to get your take on Cam Newton and Mac Jones and how that's going to turn out. But you know what?
Hey, we kind of blew by the Astros today.
Yeah, I was just thinking that time kind of got away from us.
I wanted to ask you. The trade deadline is coming up. Now we all know the Astros in first place, one of the best records in baseball. Although they have sort of struggled a little bit. I mean, they lost 3 in a row to the Yankees before winning that big game. The big 4th game of the series. They've fallen to the Indians, and they've also dropped a few games to the White Sox. Or they dropped a couple to the White Sox.
Always play them well.
Coming into the Indian series. Now, a lot of people expect the Astros to make a move at the trade deadline. Okay. There's 3 names that I keep hearing being brought up. The number 1 is Craig Kimbrell.
Okay.
A lot of people think the Astros are going to make a strong run at Kimbrell to sort of solidify that bullpen. You plug him in as your closer. You move Presley to the 8th inning, and all of a sudden your middle relievers get a boost by throwing Stanek back in there and knowing that you've really got the back end of the game sealed up with those 2. Those are 2 of the best in the business at getting you 3 to 6 outs. Mm-hmm. But I'm also hearing a lot of talk about Max Scherzer being a possibility for the Astros. That kind of takes you back to when they made the move for Verlander and what that did and how that was able to bring home a World Series.
Right on.
And then also outfielder Starling Marte of the Marlins.
He has some pop.
He's on the block, and they're looking to move him, and the Astros are said to be one of the teams in talks to maybe possibly bring him. Of those 3, which one do you think gets done? Which one would you like to see get done? And do you think
Max Scherzer?
Oh, man, that would be great. But do you think that the Astros, if they do go after a guy like Scherzer, are they going to end up putting themselves in a position where we're going to be this time, a year or two from now, or it'll be prior to the season. Let's say it'll be in March, a year or two from now, and we're talking about Scherzer moving on, all these big names moving on, like how the way Springer moved on, and you don't have that big wad of talent just chomping at the bit, kicking at the door, waiting to get in, waiting to get their major league opportunity. You don't have those guys there, and all of a sudden now we're seeing a declining Astros team without all that, good stock coming up from the minor leagues.
Right.
Where do they draw the line, Greg? Is it worth it to just sell everything you got to go get Scherzer, to go get Kimbrel, maybe even go get Marte, go get all of them if you can, and then you win this World Series and you prove everybody wrong that you could do it without cheating, or do you still keep doing as the Astros have seemed to be able to do and make the right specific move without giving up your biggest, most coveted assets?
Yeah, you know what? That's a good question, but I think where the Astros are right now with guys like Brantley, Correa, Altuve, again, this is Altuve. Tonight will mark his 10th anniversary from being called up to the big leagues and his first game 10 years ago in the big leagues. So I think where you are right now as a roster, as far as on the offensive side of the ball especially, I think you go for it all right now. You go for the juggler. Max Scherzer is still a dominant pitcher at this point in his career. He still has some gas left in the tank. Kimbrel, I don't know as much about Kimbrel right now.
The man is, baby, man. He can't.
Yeah, but is he still dominant?
Hey, no, he is dominant. He's got a sub like .0 or .25
right
ERA. So I have to let me bring up his stats real quick.
Right but I think you go for it right now. I think you go for it, and then you trust that you can build your team back up again after you win.
Right now, Craig Kimbrel boasts a .54 ERA.
0.54?
0.54 ERA.
That sounds like some Jacob DeGrom type stuff.
Pitching the best he's pitched in his career right now.
Yeah, right. And we didn't get a chance to talk a lot of baseball today. We'll definitely talk a lot of baseball early in the show next week because I wanted to talk about Shohei Ohtani and his impact and, of course, some other things as well. So definitely talk more Astros to start the show next week. Early on in the show.
Well, we're definitely going to be talking because this trade deadline thing is coming right around the corner. So there's a good chance there'll be some big moves by the time. Well, yeah, by the time we get back in here next week, too, there'll be an NBA champion and maybe one crowned tonight.
Yes, basketball season will be over. And, of course, the Houston Astros will be in full swing second half of the season. We'll see if they can keep it rolling, stay in first place.
Did you hate Kimbrel?
I do think the Astros, it will behoove them to make a move for Max Scherzer and Kimbrel or Kimbrel.
Did you hate Kimbrel when he used to play for the Red Sox?
I didn't hate it.
I hated staring down that man. It's like I was like, who does this guy think he is with his elbows all up in the air like that? Like he's trying to air out his armpits. What's this guy doing?
He had his style.
But that's because he was a Red Sox back then, you know. But, man, I'd love to see him in an Astros uniform. And I would love to be down at the ballpark and watch him, in person live. He's just one of those guys. He's got that just guys that have unique mannerisms like that. To me, that's just one of the most enjoyable parts of the game. Like growing up watching Bagwell, stand in the batter's box like he's doing some kind of weird stretch, or Hideo Nomo, the way he'd look over the center field fence before delivering a heater. Just got things like that. Even Gary Sheffield and the way he used to do the bat. All those little mannerisms and quirks that those guys have. I love that stuff about baseball, and I'd love to get a regular look at Craig Kimbrel, being the closer for the Houston Astros.
Oh, you know what? You're talking about his ERA right now. I would love it as well. I didn't know how much gas he still had in the tank. I really hadn't paid attention to him that much this season, but I know a .54 ERA, that's something special right now. And Max Scherzer, he's on a team now with the Washington Nationals. They feel like that they can make another run at it, so I don't know how willing they're going to be to really give up on him right now because they feel that they can probably win it all again as well this year. Yeah. But I would love to see the Astros.
I mean, the Braves are in a good position, too. They're hurting after losing Ronald Acuna Jr.
That was a big-time loss.
And that's probably why they're going to be big players for Starling Marte to replace Acuna and try to replace some of that production because, I mean, it's almost an impossible task.
Yeah.
But, that has to hurt their prospects of competing for a championship. But with guys like Kimbrel and Scherzer, when they get near the end of their contracts, that's when it's time, you got to pull the trigger on these guys. It'd be nice to have them, but ultimately, if you come away with nothing for a guy like that, and you don't even come close to sniffing a World Series, it's almost a fireable offense, you know?
That's true. That's true. So they would actually be going for the jugular this season if that was the case. And I can see the Astros, if they got Scherzer and Kimbrel, I can see that putting them over the top, even though they don't have Verlander right now.
Start calling this Yankee South.
Yeah, hey, man. So you know what? Let's get out here and go watch some NBA. And we will definitely be back next week.
Yeah, I'm going to watch the finals. I'm going to be peeking in on the Astros.
I will be too. So let's go watch some NBA. Eddie, fun as always. Have fun, bro. Let's do it again next week.
It's good to be
next
back.
Tuesday.
We'll be back.
Damn good to be back. Getting back in the groove.
If the sports court were a bad take, it's downright criminal.
Legends live and let live.
Later.